Hi, Russell Lewis, acting chairman for the zoning board this evening. Call to order. The following meeting has been conducted by electronic means in accordance with the Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, amended in 2020, which explicitly permits a public body to conduct meetings electronically during a state of an emergency. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the Coaster and the Asbury Park Press. All notices are on file with the board secretary. In addition, a notice regarding this virtual meeting and instructions were published in the Asbury Park Press and the City of Asbury Park website. A copy of that notice is on file with the board secretary. The notices and the conduct of this meeting are in accordance with the guidelines for virtual meetings issued by New Jersey Department of Community Affairs. Please note, all microphones of public users are muted until the public question and comment sessions. When the public question and comment session is open, you must raise your hand by clicking on the icon on the computer or dialing *9 on a telephone. When it is your time to speak, your name or the last 4 digits of your phone number will be called. Your microphone will then be unmuted. If at any time during your question you are deemed to be out of line or off topic, we reserve the right to mute your microphone and will make an announcement that this has occurred. Please turn off all cell phones and electronic devices during this meeting. If you have any background noise during the meeting, mute yourself. Please identify yourself before you speak at all times. And some attendees are attending by telephone only. This meeting is being recorded and will be available to view via APTV. Irina, can we please have date, time, and roll call?
Thank you. Today is Tuesday, May 26th, 2020. It is 7:08 p.m. and I will take roll now. Christopher Avalone.
Here.
Russell Lewis.
Here.
Daniel Harris.
Here.
Brittany Ashman.
Here.
Christopher Gonzalez. Jill Potter.
Here.
Tim Slick.
Here.
Catherine Minervini.
Here.
And Bonnie Natch.
Here.
Thank you, everyone.
First up, the minutes approval for the last meeting of May 12th, 2020, regular meeting. You'll see Irina has up on the screen the documents and mark as exhibit BB-1. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of May 12th, 2020.
I'll second.
Thank you. I have a motion
Hold
by
on.
Russell Lewis and a
Wait a minute.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I don't know if you were trying to interrupt Jack, but Dan Harris is not eligible to make a second for that
Right.
meeting. Can I have another second?
I'll make a second.
Okay.
Christopher Avalone. Thank you. So I have a motion by Russell Lewis, second by Christopher Avalone to memorialize the minutes of May 12th, 2020.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Our first application for this evening is 1302 Madison LLC, 1302 Madison Avenue, Block 1101, Lot 23 in the R1A zone. It is my understanding that this has been carried to June 9th, 2020 without further notice. I will make a motion to carry 1302 Madison LLC to our June 9th, 2020 meeting.
This is Brittany. I'll second.
I'm okay. And I just want to make a note and a correction that this says June 23rd on the screen. It's actually June 9th, 2020. So I have a motion by Russell Lewis, a second by Brittany Ashman for the application 1302 Madison Avenue to be carried to June 9th, 2020 without further notice. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Application carried to June 9th, 2020.
The next
Irina,
application,
Excuse me?
yes,
Sorry for the interruption.
no worries.
Irina, do we have email on this one from the attorney consenting to the extension and any waivers?
Yes, we do.
Good, thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
No
Thank you.
worries. The next application is New Singular Wireless PCS LLC, also known as AT&T, at 321 Sunset Avenue, Block 3606, Lot 10 in the R3 zone. This is a use and height variance waiver and site plan for installation of 20 telecommunication antenna and related equipment behind a proposed concealment frame and a generator on the rooftop of an existing multifamily building. Chris, I believe you're choosing to recuse yourself from this application this evening?
Yes, I will recuse myself from this application.
All right. I guess we will swear in board professionals now, Jack.
Yes. Donna, Jason, and Doug, please raise your right hands. You solemnly swear that the testimony you'll give in this matter this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please state your name in order and your position with the board, please.
Donna Miller, board planner.
Jason Fitchter, board engineer.
Doug?
Doug Cleland, board engineer.
Okay.
Great. Ms. Fairweather, you are up.
Hi.
Fairweather speaks.
Good evening, everyone. This is the strangest hearing I have ever done. I want to very much thank the board for doing this remotely. This is AT&T's first remote hearing. And we give you a lot of credit because some towns are still waiting it out to see if they're going to have face-to-face at the end of June or July. So I want to thank you all very much. Irina, I especially want to thank you because I know we were kind of a little bit of a pain and you did a very good job with us. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
So we're before you this evening on an application to place 20 antennas equipment, related equipment and a generator on the roof of the building on 321 Sunset Ave. Just quickly as a background, AT&T has been working for basically 3 years trying to find a site in Asbury Park. We've had a very hard time because your community is beautiful and you have low structures and you don't have a tall structure for us to go on. Matter of fact, this condominium building is about the highest that there is, and the landlord and the condominium association was kind enough to lease to us. But we've been trying for a very long time. And almost by lot and block, we could tell you about the different properties in your community. Right now, we have a temporary site on your water sewer treatment plant, just a couple very small antennas to be able to cover for some of the emergency services, because obviously this past weekend you have a larger influx of people there. So we are before you, and as your planner pointed out, we are, because we have something called FirstNet, with my radio frequency engineer will discuss, our telephone system, our communication system provides public safety to the community. We need a height variance by greater than 10%, a D6 variance because of the antennas above the building. And we need site plan approval. Excuse me. I just want to tell you what to expect. I have 4 witnesses. The first one is Daniel Panetta, and he's my radio frequency engineer, and he's going to talk about why we need the site and the types of coverage AT&T gives. Then we're going to have Dave Collins, and he is the expert that analyzes the energy output and will testify that we comply with all the requirements of the FCC. And then I have Gary Lucas, my civil engineer, who will physically explain what we're doing to the building from an engineering standpoint. And then finally, Paul Rickey, my planner. So you will have 4 witnesses. And if it's okay with you, Mr. Chair, I will start with Dan Panetta unless there's anything else you'd like to go over, or Jack.
Yeah, I've reviewed the notices for this application. They're in proper order and we have jurisdiction to proceed.
Great, thank you.
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, Daniel, raise your right hand.
Dan, raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, yes.
Please state your name for the record and spell it. And your attorney will ask you your professional qualifications.
Yes. First name Daniel, last name Penesso, P-E-N-E-S-S-O. Address is 15 East Midland Avenue, Paramus, New Jersey. And shall I go through my qualifications?
You got it. Educational and professional background, Dan.
Yes, so I have a Bachelor of Science, Electronic Engineering. I have been employed as a radio frequency engineer for over 20 years. I have been responsible for design and implementation of the proposed application before the board tonight. And I have been accepted as an expert witness throughout the state of New Jersey in hundreds of applications such as this, and I believe before Asbury Park in the past as well.
We'll accept your credentials. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry if I can just interrupt for 1 second. This is Irina Gasparian, Board Secretary. Christopher Gonzalez, one of our board members, has joined the meeting.
Okay.
Jack, do you want me to take roll again?
Yes, please.
Okay. So all board members, if I can please ask you to unmute yourselves. Perfect. And I will take roll again one more time. Christopher Avalone is
Here.
recused. Russell Lewis,
Here.
Daniel Harris,
Here.
Brittany Ashman,
Here.
Christopher Gonzalez,
Here.
Jill Potter,
Here.
Tim Slick,
Here.
Catherine Minervini,
Here.
and Bonnie Natch.
Here.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for the interruption. You may proceed.
Great. Dan, is AT&T licensed by the FCC?
Yes,
And pursuant to their license, they need to provide coverage to their customers?
yes.
And can you just talk, before you talk about the gaps that we have in Asbury Park, can you please explain to us what type of coverage we provide?
Yes, without using the exhibits, or shall I use the exhibit?
No, just talk about it just quickly. You talk about
Okay.
that and
So, as you had mentioned, Judy, we have a temporary site, which is, it had been in an, it was on for a number of years now. We had a cell on wheels, which was at 203 3rd Avenue. And then that property went into construction, or there was some issues with it, so we couldn't utilize that. And a cell on wheels is basically a temporary tower. And then you mentioned that we're now at the water treatment facility plant, which is like a 2-story building, not very tall, 20 or 30 feet tall. And we're trying to utilize that. But these temporary sites will not fulfill our coverage need for the area, because as you mentioned, there are an influx of subscribers that come to Asbury Park during the summer. And we have existing sites to the north and south of our search area for this particular need of coverage that are trying to provide the coverage in the area, but they can't fulfill that need. That's why we need this site, so that we can provide reliable coverage to all the subscribers, as well as providing FirstNet that you mentioned.
thank you. What is that, Dan?
And so FirstNet is, it's a public-private infrastructure that AT&T has been awarded to build out nationwide. And FirstNet allows first responders to access a network in case there's an emergency. If there is no emergency, it's in the 700 megahertz spectrum. And if there is an emergency, that spectrum is allocated to first responders, dedicated to them, so that there would be no congestion on the network. It would be just basically a private network for first responders, so that they can use if there is an emergency. So it's
This covers the problem that we had in 9/11, where New York couldn't talk to New Jersey, Monmouth County couldn't talk to Somerset County. So that
Correct.
all first responders are using the same network, correct?
Correct. And it's to send and receive data, video, images, and texts. So without concerns of having the network being congested if there is an issue with an emergency. So that's going to be interoperable communication between agencies, whether it be, fire, police, hospitals, all of that will have, and each of these first responders will have a SIM card, a special in their phone, so that it's dedicated to them. They are the only ones that would have access to that.
Okay, great.
Network.
And let's talk about the existing coverage, please, we have in Asbury Park and what we have proposed, and go to your map. if you'd like.
Sure. So I'm going to now share the screen. Let's see this. And the map that, okay, I think I did it correctly.
Oh, there's it. Mark it.
Did it come up? So this
There
is,
it is. Good job, Dan.
so this is a map 1, and it's dated with today's date and labeled Exhibit A1 on the bottom right, where my cursor is. And this is titled Map Number 1, AT&T Neighboring Coverage. And it has our site ID W5869 with the address of the proposed location in Asbury Park. And these were created on March 12th of this year.
Wait a minute, Dan.
Say?
I'm sorry, who created these?
Oh, and I created these.
Great.
Where my cursor is a yellow star, which represents the location of the proposed installation.
Move your cursor a little bit, please, Dan. I can't see
And
it. Oh, there it
this
is. Okay.
I'm circling around the
Perfect.
star, and the label is W5869. And then you'll see purple dots, which are existing on-air sites. There's one to the north, which is labeled NWL06368. And I can give you the address of, shall I go through each thing and like I
The
normally do?
adjacent sites, yeah. Just
Yes.
quickly tell us where the adjacent sites are.
Yeah, so these are the adjacent on-air sites that are providing some coverage to the area. And that 6368 is in Allenhurst, and that's a monopole at the Benson Park, where the Benson Park water tank is located. Then to the south of our proposed site, we have NWL04030, which is the 601 Bank Street rooftop, which is in Asbury Park, that we're utilizing. And then north and west of the proposed, where I'm circling now, is NWL4022, the site ID, and that's located at 25 Valley Road in Ocean, and that's a monopole. Those are the immediate adjacent sites neighboring to this proposed location. The blue, the bluish color that you see is reliable in building coverage, and the green is reliable in vehicle coverage being provided by the existing on-air sites. And the reason why we need this site, as I mentioned before, is because of when we have an influx of subscribers that come into this area, and we have the congestion on the network, these neighboring cell sites can't handle that volume, and the network gets congested. So in order for the network to operate reliable, we need to have this site that we're proposing before you all tonight.
And what would the coverage look like, Dan, if they were to approve the application?
Yes, I'll go to the, let's see, how do I do that now? How do I get the main, okay, let's see, stop share. And then share. Sorry, I'm a little slow.
That's all right. I think we're all learning this evening.
You're doing great. Thank you.
Now this one that I'm sharing.
Uh-huh. Whoa, Dan, we have a lot there.
Wait, did it? Oh, wait, I didn't click the right thing. Hang on. Stop share. Share. Map 2. Okay, now it should come up because it gets highlighted around it. I see. So this is labeled Exhibit A1 with today's date, 5/26/20, and it's titled Map Number 2 with AT&T's proposed composite coverage if this site were integrated and brought into the network. And as you, I'll go put my cursor around this is the proposed site. And as you can see, all the areas that were spotty with non-in-building coverage are now being filled in with this proposed location. So that we cover.
Is that when someone's making a call on the system or using their computer on the system or working on the system, their coverage will be complete. It won't be spotty. They won't drop. They won't lose. They won't stall out on their computer.
Correct. And it's covering all of the beach area, the convention center. There's also concerts or events that they put near the Stone Pony, different places that bring in a lot of people that we need to cover. So that was another thing that I wanted to add for the reason, in addition for the FirstNet and what I stated prior, why we need this site. And as you can see, if the site is approved and integrated, it does fulfill that gap.
Okay, and so in your professional opinion, AT&T needs the site not only to comply with its FCC license to provide service to its customers, but to also implement the FirstNet service, which is used by the Asbury Park Police
That's correct, yes.
and the county. Okay.
That's correct, yes.
That's the only questions I have for Dan.
Okay. We will move it to board members to ask Mr. Panetta any questions based on his testimony. And I, just so you board members know, I'm going to be going through and asking each one of you if you have any questions for any of the professionals on either side tonight, just so we make sure that we're documenting everyone properly. So Jill, I'm going to start with you. Do you have any questions for Mr. Panetta based on his testimony right now?
I do, and I'm not sure if he's going to be able to answer these, so I'm not sure if he's the right person, but I'll just,
Okay.
anyway. Of the 20 antenna, how many will be allocated for FirstNet?
The 700 megahertz spectrum. So there's going to be 5 sectors of antennas with 4 antennas in each sector. And the spectrum that AT&T has ranges from, there's blocks of spectrum, 700 right up to 2300. So different antennas have different spectrum on them. So the 700 megahertz spectrum will be on 2 antennas, so that because it's 2 different blocks of 700.
So Dan, 2 antennas out of the 20 antennas?
No, 2 out of each sector. Sorry, I did 2 antennas on each, per sector, I'm saying. Because each of the sectors is covering a specific geographic area that we're trying to focus on in Asbury. And we have the 5 sectors because of the fact that we're trying to cover each one of these is, if you have a large amount of people, we want to make sure that if you have a group of people in one area or another area, that we're able to cover them. So if you have a limited amount of sectors, it's like having multiple eyes, as an example. So the more eyes you have, the more you can see and cover. That's the reason for this design on this site.
And then the other locations in Allenhurst on Bangs and Valley Road, they'll remain intact once it's constructed, and they'll all work in concert together?
Yes, as you can see on the exhibit that, I think it's unshared now, but the last exhibit that I had, that's a composite with the existing on-air sites, as well as the proposed, all in concert, working together.
And then, so then that would mean the removal of the antenna, the temporary one from the water treatment plant?
Correct.
All right, and then, so when FirstNet doesn't need to be utilized, that bandwidth, if that's correct terminology, is opened up to public use?
That's correct.
Okay. And then, I don't know if you're the one to ask about natural disasters, but I have a couple of questions about that.
Go ahead and ask, and if you can't answer them, we'll just figure out which subsequent witness would.
So in your plans, I saw that there's a 30 kilowatt generator that's going to be up there as well?
Yes. You know what, that might be for the civil engineer if you're going to ask generator questions.
I just wanted to.
Oh, okay, good.
I saw. And then that is just for utilization to keep the antenna and the signal running should there be a disaster.
That's correct.
And then, so.
If power were lost, if power were not there, that's to maintain power.
Yep.
Yep.
And then do you have a contingency plan? Should there be a natural disaster, say like a Harvey or a Katrina or a Sandy, where in those instances, like 70 or 80% of cell providers, towers were knocked out? What is the contingency plan if they were to go down on 321 to bring them back online for first responders for FirstNet?
Meaning if the building were damaged or something like that? Is that what you're saying?
Antennas specifically,
Antennas specifically?
damage or, gale force winds, hurricane force winds. Do you have a plan as a company like that gets priority to the FirstNet antennas?
Right. If any cell site goes down, then maintenance crew would have to be dispatched to repair whatever the damages were. Yes.
Right. But is there a priority given when it incorporates the FirstNet system?
But every cell site will have FirstNet. So every cell site is necessary for, to see the coverage footprint that I showed you. If a cell site were to go down, then the area of coverage that they provide, that would be, wouldn't be there if they are not if it's not operating. So we would have to get that online as quickly as possible.
And then you guys have as a company a priority? Like how is that, if the Northeast is affected, what's the priority of?
I think that maybe our civil engineer who actually builds the sites and goes in and manages them, Gary, he's like 2 witnesses down. I think he might be the best one to answer your question regarding this, because his
That-
company actually goes in and does repairs.
Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. Next up, Catherine, do you have any questions for this witness?
No, I don't think so. Thanks.
Brittany,
No questions. Thank you.
Tim,
No questions, thank you.
Bonnie,
None. Thank you.
Mr. Harris? Danny, are you with us?
You're on mute, Dan.
Unmute yourself.
Yeah, I did. My bad. Okay, I have a few questions. Good evening, sir. First, how long is it going to take to construct these towers?
I'll leave that to the civil engineer, but once it gets approved, then there's processes that have to be put in place so that it can be constructed.
Okay. Now, this one might be for the civil engineer also. How are they storm rated?
Yeah, that's for the civil engineer.
Civil engineer also. Okay. Okay. Now, for expansion, will this be your last time coming to Asbury to put antennas up, or where as Asbury expands, you may be coming back?
I can't say that we'll never be back before the board for another cell site, but at this time, we do not have any plans for a new search area at this moment.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danny. Christopher, do you have any questions?
No, pretty much Jill asked a few questions that I wanted to ask, so the questions has been answered.
Okay. Do our professionals, Donna, Jason, Doug, do you have any questions for this witness at this time?
None for this witness for me. This is Jason.
Thanks, Jason.
This is Donna Miller, board planner. I have a bunch of questions. Okay. Mr. Panesso and Ms. Fairweather, you both have said basically it was a long search. You looked for a best site. There are apparently no other buildings suited. Can you tell us why 400 Deal Lake Drive wasn't suitable? It's a taller building. I mean, I could think of a couple other buildings that are taller than the Esplanade.
Especially the new hotel that they built that we wanted to go on.
On the east side, I mean.
Dan, do you want to address that, or?
I can state that we needed, if I have to go back to the exhibit, but the location of where we are proposed, we need to fulfill that gap in coverage. So we need to be in this immediate vicinity. So any tall structure that was in this immediate vicinity was explored. And we also have to have a willing landlord to get onto a property. And that has to be in the right location with the proper height to fulfill this gap. And
approached the Asbury and Asbury Lanes and everybody on the east side there.
Right, and so that's how we ended up at this location, because we had to, we scrubbed the area for many other properties, and this was one that's afforded to us.
Afforded meaning that the landlord would enter into a lease agreement. Most
right.
of the buildings that they wouldn't enter into a lease agreement. They didn't want antennas on their building.
Correct.
Were there other sites that were as well suited, but you couldn't get consent or couldn't reach a deal?
Actually, Dan, wasn't one of your favorite sites that big, beautiful new building that they built over by, I think it's condominiums. I don't think it's rental hotel rooms. The brand new building.
Yeah, just south of here, I think, where we're proposed.
And they couldn't, the landlord wanted to do something special with the rooftop or pool and a bar and things like that, so we did not want antennas on it.
Right, there were reasons why we had to come here.
Okay, so you're saying that there are other sites, you just couldn't get
the lease
agreement.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's a very different statement than there's no place else to go.
Our bottom line is there isn't any place else to go because we physically can't, but yes.
Okay.
Yes, there are other places to go.
Okay, and then, so you show the coverage map in the current state with your temporary site and the other two permanent sites. There seems to be a lot of green on the map on the west side. And you've testified that there are no immediate plans to look at other areas to fix coverage gaps. I mean, we have a lot of buildings on the west side that would benefit from FirstNet coverage. What is the plan to serve those gaps on the west side?
Yeah, I can state at this time, this is Daniel Panetta speaking. At this time, we have no other search areas to the west towards Central Ave, where you saw the white and green area. And that's why I said in the future, I can't state that we won't be back before the board. But at this time, we don't have a search ring specifically for that geographic area, but that is an area that would be looked into for coverage.
I don't want to speak for the board, but I would hope that AT&T thinks very long and hard about providing coverage in those areas. It's, you know, that is the community. We appreciate and thank that there's going to be coverage for the tourist influx, and during an emergency, first responders will have that access. But every day of the year, 24/7, January to June, still important to the residents of this city. And if first responders can't communicate on Asbury Avenue west of Main Street, that's a letdown.
Understood.
And because this application, I mean, 50% of the antennas you're proposing are serving FirstNet. I'm not pleased with the way the ordinance is worded right now, where this application is basically exempt from a lot of the provisions normally that would be applicable to a cell tower or telecommunication facility. A comprehensive plan would have been required. We'd want to know where else you think towers need to go. Where's the best sites for them so that we get full coverage. This FirstNet thing is very important. And I think the board members, and I was really expecting some public tonight to come in and voice concern about making sure that in the future, the rest of the city is going to have adequate coverage.
We understand exactly what you're saying.
Our engineer or somebody else from AT&T can talk a little bit about that. That would be helpful.
Sure. Do you want him to discuss it now, or are you talking about him going back and discussing it with AT&T?
If all he has right now is that there are no immediate plans, I mean, obviously he hasn't been either contracted to search other sites. I don't know that there's.
Okay, I understand, and I'll make sure that I go back also.
Yes, I can do that too.
Appreciate it.
But Donna, as you look at the exhibits, there will be in-vehicle coverage, but it's not, you know, I know what you're saying because you want to have in-building, in case there's an emergency, to have in-building coverage. And I will, you know, I can find out if there are, because the build plan, how do I want to explain that? I can find out and get back to you and let you know what will be the direction moving forward to provide coverage in that area.
I think that's a good idea, Dan.
And I have your email, Don. I could also contact you.
I mean, it would be helpful for the city in general.
Yes.
Services. But, you know, the same point about in-building coverage for FirstNet is
Right.
key. It's not like there aren't multi-story buildings and with high density residential use on the west side that would benefit from that FirstNet coverage. So, you know, you're telling us this is for FirstNet, and we're making this important advance for the city. Unfortunately, you know, a lot of times that part of the community is neglected, and we don't want to let them feel neglected about something as important as this.
Of course.
Daniel Panetta, understood, yes.
I'll off my soapbox now, guys. It's all you.
Donna, thank you very much for that. Any other professionals on the Asbury Park side that want to ask any questions?
No.
No. Do we have any public at this point to cross-examine? Public?
Yes, we do. Just one moment. This is Irina Gasparian, and I have two public attendees that would like to talk. The first one will be phone number ending in 5124. Go ahead and speak.
No, they don't go ahead.
Hi.
Oh.
What?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jack.
Can all of the potential questioners hear me at this point, Irina?
Yes, everyone can hear you.
Okay, all right. Sorry for the interruption. However, for the people who have intentions of asking this witness or any other witness questions, please understand that you're going to be cross-examining the witness. The scope of your questions has to be within the testimony that was offered by the witness and questions that he may have answered. So if you want to make a comment, that's for a later point in the hearing. You will certainly be afforded that opportunity. So your questions have to be specific to the testimony, and please refrain from characterizing his testimony and then putting a question at the end. That's not permitted. Please go right ahead, ask all the relevant questions you please, directly to the witness about his testimony within the scope of his testimony. And if anyone who can hear me has any questions about my instructions, please let us know and I will answer them before you start to speak. No? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Jack. This is Irina Gasparian. I'm going to now unmute you. That's phone number ending in, and I can't see your phone number, 5124. Please state your name and ask your question.
Hi, Rita Morano, 8th Avenue. I happen to be living in that area. How tall is the, I mean, we can't see the pictures that you could see. I think this is a very unfair meeting to begin with, because evidently you saw something on the TV that we cannot see. How tall is this tower going to be? First of all, this is a historical neighborhood.
Let him, you asked the question, let him answer it. How tall is the building?
78 feet is the approximate height of where the antennas will be placed on the roof. So the antennas are being placed on the roof.
30 feet?
No, 78. 78.
I'd like to just, hi, this is Judy Fairweather. I'm the attorney for AT&T. If you want to talk about the physical, like how tall the roof of the building is, how tall the parapet is, and how the antennas are going to stand out above that, that's best for my civil engineer, which is in 2 witnesses. This engineer, this is a radio frequency engineer, and he was just talking about the coverage that you'll have with your telephones and your computers and things. So any physical part of it, if you can just patiently wait for 2 more witnesses and we'll gladly answer.
It's very hard to understand you. There's like an echo with your mic. But anyway, are these the antennas that hang over the side of the building?
No, these antennas are going to be stealthed, meaning that you won't be able to see them from the ground. They'll be placed on the roof, and then they'll be covered with an RF transparent screening.
This happens to be the most beautiful street in Asbury. I don't think it needs an antenna, but I know Mr. Serpico is going to.
You're testifying. You're testifying.
Rita, I'm sorry I had to unmute you. Again, please keep it to questions only for this testimony. Go ahead, Rita.
Oh, who's the woman that keeps interrupting? I didn't hear what you said. There's somebody else that came in when you were talking. Do you know what that was? But anyway, about this antenna. I think how many stories are in this building? 6? 6 stories?
I think that those questions, hi Rita, my name is Judy. I think that those questions on the physical part of the building is best for our civil engineer. So not this witness, but 2 witnesses from now. I think that that's the best person to ask.
Okay, I'll save my opinion for later. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Rita. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to ask questions of this witness based on his testimony only?
Okay, thank you, Russell. The next person is phone number ending in 3510. Jack, did you want to remind them?
Well, I asked before, could they hear me? Or do I have to repeat it for each person?
No, they can all hear you.
So they heard my instructions, and if they have any questions of me about those instructions before they start their questioning, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay, phone number ending in 3510. Go ahead and state your name and ask your question. Is anyone there? Phone number ending in 3510. Okay, we'll come back to you. Next person is Chris Avalone. Go ahead and speak.
Mr. Panessa, you mentioned you had shown us one map that showed us the coverage of a particular area in Asbury Park by utilizing the Esplanade. Do you have other maps of different buildings that would also illustrate that coverage?
Repeat your question. I'm not following what you're asking. Of a proposed location, you mean?
Of another proposed location aside from the Esplanade?
No, I do not. Because this is the only site that we were able to utilize to provide the
For
coverage.
3 years, this is the only site that you've ever found.
That's correct.
And you have not evaluated any other site in Asbury?
As far as the proposed site for tonight's hearing, there would be no need for me to show because they wouldn't work. They're not available to us. If I were able to put up a monopole like where we put our cow up, our cell on wheels, that would work. But I can't show you that because it's not a valid site. We have to have a valid site where we can place our antennas to work.
So, Ms. Fairweather, you mentioned that over the past 3 years, you've been trying to find a site. What sites have you asked at this particular, over this 3-year period that you stated, what sites have you gone to in this town to make the coverage that Mr. Panessa has shown on his map?
Sure. Chris Basso, are you on the call? Are you on the hearing? Christopher? Let me text my real estate person who's been working on this.
Sorry, Judith, he is on the call. I think he's an attendee. Do you want me to allow him to talk now?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, Chris, go ahead.
Is he under oath?
No, we have to swear him in. Chris, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Chris.
Very good.
We have to swear you in.
All right, Chris, I can't see you, but you're going to have to raise your right hand.
I don't know why you wouldn't be able to see me. I'm raising my right hand.
I can't see him.
Chris, do you have a cover over your camera?
It's open, actually.
No, Chris, go ahead and scroll and move your cursor down to the bottom of your screen and click on the video icon. You are on audio only.
I see.
See on the bottom left, Chris?
I'm looking right now. I just microphone, same system, speaker context. I don't see why it's not an option.
Mine is next to video. Mine is next to microphone. There's a little camera.
Chris, this is Irina again. You may have joined without video. So if we can hold off on that question, Judith, and let's have Chris exit and enter the meeting again.
I'll do it.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Sorry. Darn it.
Should I proceed with?
Why don't we wait a minute and let him come back in? Let's see if he comes back in. Irina, anything?
No, not yet.
Okay, why don't we move on to another question and we'll try and get him back in the loop to answer this question, if that's okay with everyone.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Are you aware, Mr. Panessa, that this particular building, the Esplanade, is already a pre-existing non-conforming structure?
I don't think that's a relevant question to the witness.
Yeah, he's the radio frequency engineer. He would have never looked at zoning or anything. He only cares about coverage, and he didn't testify to any of that.
Okay, I'll
The
withhold
planner
the
would be a good guy to ask, our last witness, Chris.
Okay. So I guess I really want to know if there were other buildings that were evaluated for this particular coverage that Mr. Panetta has provided us with this particular map. If you could demonstrate other buildings that you looked at for the same amount of coverage.
Chris, are you on? Irina, do you see Chris Basso yet?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. You know what, Chris, if we can't see you, we can't see you. I can verify, Jack, that that's his voice, and you can swear him in if you're comfortable.
It didn't give me any option to do otherwise. I'm sorry.
Okay. Please raise your right hand.
I am raising my right hand.
Fine, and the oath is most important. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, so help me God.
Okay, please state your name for the record.
Christopher Basso, B-A-S-S-O. My address is 11 Wilderness Drive, Medford, New Jersey.
Okay, Judith, if you wouldn't mind giving us some background on this witness so that we know he's has the capacity to answer the question.
Chris, can you please explain to us how you are related to this project and what your job was for AT&T?
Sure. I've been project manager for AT&T Wireless, particularly for this Northern New Jersey project, which would include this very site that we're talking about this evening, for nearly 3 years.
And Chris, can you please, you heard the questions from the other Chris that's been on this evening about what other properties we looked at. Can you please go through what other properties we looked at? Because we just asked Dan to present these propagation maps tonight because obviously the other properties weren't viable.
Yes, I can pull up a list of properties, but very quickly, if there was any building of any appreciable height, I personally knocked on those doors. That would include sites to the north, which were close to an existing site that is a water tank. Those buildings over there were all solicited, and then of course sites to the south, which I came to find out that we are on already. But
Mr. Basso, I really like you to be a little bit more specific.
Sure. Just hold on a minute, and I will pull up some addresses for you. I'm able to do that.
As they're silent, I can.
Okay.
Okay, good.
I think I have a list in front of me. Just a moment. Whoops.
No pressure here.
Here we go. I have it. I've got the list. Okay, starting at 2601 First Avenue, approximately 130-foot rooftop. RF did not like that property. I'm not exactly sure why. I think it might have been too close to something else. 213 Second Avenue. It's an approximately 35-foot rooftop. There was no response to numerous solicitations. 206-210 Second Avenue, approximately 50-foot rooftop. Numerous solicitations, no response, no landlord interest. 210 Fifth Street, the Asbury Hotel. I was in there, dropped my card off, and of course sent letters on numerous occasions. No interest whatsoever. 321 Sunset, which we're talking about this evening, that was the sixth property. 615, 75-foot, approximately 75-foot rooftop. I went in person, hand-delivered letters, no response, no landlord interest. 510 Deal Lake Drive, approximately 140-foot rooftop. There's another one that we did not, that I did not receive response to. 200 Deal Lake Drive, RF indicated that was too close to an existing site to the north. 1701 Ocean Avenue. Also, our radio frequency engineers indicated that it was too far to the north end of the beach. 1501 Ocean Avenue. It's approximately 85-foot rooftop. Didn't get any response from them. 101 Asbury Avenue, the Empress Hotel. I know it's a low rooftop, but we tried that one too, and they sent me out. I was there on a couple of occasions at least. 400 Deal Lake Drive, approximately 100-foot rooftop, no callbacks. Dropped off offer letters in person. 610 Seawall. I don't think that worked from RF's perspective. I think it was too close to something we had to the south. And those are the ones that I reached out to, all those.
So you say, I'm sorry. When you say you had no response, Mr. Basso, what exactly, how many times did you try to contact them? Was it just once?
Oh, no. At least 2 times, and in person. I was out knocking on those very doors in person twice, and once another man named Lamar Freeman, who was working it previously before I took over the site. So there were numerous times that we were down there trying to solicit some sort of response.
So why were all of your choices on the east side?
They were on the east side because the directive was to look for sites along the east side. Simply put,
but your
I'm
coverage.
not an RF engineer. I'm just I'm a real estate person. They give me the basic areas. Of course, I do. There are occasions where I, may expand beyond that, just as a matter of desperation or just trying to see what I can find. But
so your directive was solely the east side.
Well, for the most part, yes. Those areas that were along the shore, that I'm given direction pictorially. So I look at the map and I basically go from there. Yeah.
Mr. Panetta, a question for you. Why wasn't other locations in Asbury chosen aside from the east side?
No, as I stated in my initial testimony, this is the search area that we need to cover because of the influx of people that go to the beach area. As I stated when I was speaking with Donna, the area where you saw on my exhibit that showed the green area, reliable in vehicle, that is an area of Asbury to the west of our proposed site, but this search ring is specifically designed to cover this geographic area.
So you're saying
in between the 2 existing cell sites that are currently on air.
So you're specifically stating for 3 months of the year where there's an influx.
The coverage, Dan, the coverage that you showed that there was not in-building coverage the way it is, correct? I mean, the existing coverage.
That's correct, yes.
So the coverage in that area is not good. Yes, it does the influx in the summer and the fall, but the actual coverage itself is not that good. And
correct. And with all the new construction that's occurring, all the new apartment buildings that are being constructed, this site is needed because there are a lot of new residences that are moving into this area, this specific geographic area. There's a lot of construction going on currently. And this is to provide coverage to those new residences and businesses that are being put into Asbury.
Could you put up your map again, Mr. Panetta?
Sure. So I have the map. This is the map number 2, which is the AT&T proposed composite coverage, showing the proposed site with the yellow star, which I'm circling, and the neighboring cell sites north and south of our proposed site.
So without this coverage, it was a little spotty before. Is that correct?
I can show you that.
Can you put them side to side?
I don't know if I can do 2. Let me see if I can select 2. Let's see. I may have to do the whole desktop. Let's see if I share the, if you can't select them individually, I can share the whole desktop. Hang on, let's see. And then I'll move the, it may be busy, but let's see.
Good job, Dan.
Let's see. So can you see
Yes.
where I have my cursor now is the map number 1 with the neighboring coverage, meaning the existing on-air coverage within AT&T
Right.
network. And then map number 2 is the proposed composite.
So from my perspective, this seems like it's a little spotty with the first exhibit, and then it gets better somewhat using the Esplanade. Is that a fair analysis?
Right. As you can see, all this area, which is showing unreliable, you see there is blue, which is in building, some, and then in vehicles, so it's spotty coverage. This site is, this site that we're proposing before the board tonight is to provide solid, reliable coverage throughout that geographic area, which I'm circling now on map number 2. As well as beach area.
But where the coverage is worse is to the west of that area. Is that correct?
And as you can see, the this is the composite coverage where my cursor is. We improve the coverage to the west as you get toward, this is Bridge Street, which I'm tracing. And if you look here at the prior exhibit, which is just existing on-air coverage, we do provide coverage. It is getting west and solidifying some with this new proposed site. We do fill in, if you compare the two, you can see the two, I'm circling this area, does get better coverage as compared to what's existing.
If you had to,
so the reason why you asked why we were east, Chris, not to cut you off, Chris, but you asked why we were east.
No,
we're trying to provide coverage to the beach area, which you can see is now fulfilled with this proposed site, and all of the area of between the two existing on-air sites. And I spoke with, as speaking with Donna, I know there is a concern, why aren't we providing more coverage to this area, which I'm circling now, west of our proposed site. And I will reach out to AT&T to see what the future plans are, because I know it is a concern to provide coverage, but we need to provide coverage not only east, but west. And this is, for this particular search ring, this site is needed to provide this coverage on the eastern portion of Asbury. So we need this site. We can't say not build this site and move it to the west. So we, in order to provide the coverage that we need here. So this is the reason why we are proposing, and we do have existing on our site. So we have a very small geographic area for the search ring, as Chris Basso was directed to find a site and allow us to put antennas on. And we couldn't build a monopole or a stealth monopine, something like that. We have to find a structure that exists in this area, because we can't build a structure that's tall enough to give us our coverage that's needed.
I understand, Mr. Panesso, but my question is, if the building was a taller building, a more appropriate building in the sense that would it provide better coverage overall, as opposed to a building which is only 7 floors high?
Well,
now, I don't know that. I can only ask that question.
But I'm going to object here because you're asking a hypothetical question. Sure, if you let my RF engineer build something that's 7 or 8 stories tall, a monopole or something, they can do it. There isn't anything. Chris Basso just went over all of the properties he went through. So a hypothetical question doesn't work here because we only have what we have.
Well, and to add to that, it's that we have, putting my cursor on the existing site to the north and to the south. We can't have a very, very tall structure, because then we would have interference with these existing on-air sites as well, because we have to balance, it's a balanced path that has to be maintained between the users and the cell sites, wherever the users are, for the coverage footprint that's being provided by an existing on-air site, and the cell site itself. So we have to have the balanced path, meaning that if we had a very tall structure where our search ring was, and tried to put our cell site there, we could cause interference with the existing on-air sites. So that we have to have the balance. We can't be too short or too low. We have to find a site that fits, that can propagate, as well as not overshoot into the existing on-air sites and provide too much coverage either. And based on the topography, this is why we don't cover, this is where my cursor is, Central Ave. We get a little bit of coverage to the west, but it doesn't quite, it increases as you get toward Bridge Street, and then you see it drops off. So this site is giving some coverage to the west, but the main designated area of coverage was the beach area, as well as the area around the search ring.
Thank you, Mr. Panessa.
Thank you.
No further questions.
Jack, since we have introduced a new witness in Christopher Basso, should we go through and make sure that the board and the professionals have all asked questions of his testimony?
Yes.
Great.
And unless Judith has more testimony from that witness.
No, that's all.
Right, then based on the testimony, absolutely, Russell, yeah, go board members and then members of the public may have questions.
All right, great. I'll start with you again, Jill. Do you have any questions for Christopher Basso, the real estate agent who just testified?
Not at this time.
Catherine?
I do have a question for Mr. Basso about, you're saying that nobody responded. Do you have, do you request a landlord to give you any kind of written rejection letter?
Well, if I could get the written rejection letter, I would certainly get it. In my 22 years of doing this, most landlords never provide such a letter because they don't want to be on the record as being for or against something, and they want to maintain their ability to change their mind down the road. I will tell you that the list that I read off was something I provided to the client, because the client was not confident that I was knocking on doors and getting out there. So I prepared the list which I regaled you with, mostly as a defense of the work that I did, but in this instance to demonstrate to you that I've been trying to get something going there for a long time.
Also for 321 Sunset, do they receive some kind of, is there a lease agreement? That I'm not familiar with this kind of thing.
Yes, ultimately there will be a lease agreement. At present we are finishing up our negotiations. It's not uncommon for us to, based on the confidence level that we have with a particular property owner, to go into zoning with a letter of authorization, which they provide, and us to continue that process simultaneously so that we can get the site up and running more quickly.
Okay. And then I have a question for Mr. Panessa. Should I ask it now or should I wait?
No, we should probably ask it now.
Okay. So you did a good explanation of finding the right balance of heights. Were there any buildings or locations in Lock Harbor or Allenhurst area? Because that seems to be adjacent to the property that you're looking at. Were those investigated as well?
Daniel Panesso, meaning this is Lock Harbor here, this area here. It's too, if you see this where I'm putting my cursor, this is an existing on-air site. So we can't go into Lock Harbor because it's too far north, and meaning that it would cause interference with this existing on-air site if we were to construct a site here.
Okay, just confirming.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Am I still sharing? I don't know.
Yes.
So we can see your two exit.
Okay.
That's helpful. I just wasn't sure. I understood what you were saying earlier in the conversation,
Okay.
but now that you pointed that out, I wasn't sure if there was just no buildings over that way, or if it was too close, or it was a height
Right.
placement for towers, and was wondering if those, those municipalities were pushing you to the Asbury side.
Oh, no.
No.
Okay. If they're attorney, I can tell you, doing their whole zoning in New Jersey.
Okay, thank you.
I have a follow-up question. This is Brittany. To Catherine's question, did you consider going on Sunset but on the west side? Because I get that you can't have anything close to the tower to the north and the tower to the south, but what about going, if it's a triangle, what about flipping it?
No, as I stated, this particular search ring is designated for this area. We have to stay within this specific area to get the coverage to provide to the beach, to the properties that I mentioned prior in my testimony. If we were to go west, we wouldn't be able to cover east. So this site search ring is specifically designated to cover in between these two existing on-air sites, because these two existing on-air sites cannot handle the volume of calls and if there were ever an emergency, as we stated prior, this specific geographic area.
Well, what about something like along Memorial Drive that still could maybe serve the beach, but also increase the coverage on the west side? Did you look over there? I know there's a lot of industrial and commercial buildings along Memorial Drive.
Let me find, let's see here, Memorial Drive. Memorial Drive is how many blocks from here? I see Grand.
It runs parallel to the railroad track. It's on the west side.
Yeah, it's too far west. I don't see your name now, actually. I'm sorry.
Brittany.
Brittany, sorry, Brittany. Yeah, that would be too far west. We have to be in this, we have to be near Kingsley, this area we have to be, because we have to provide the coverage, as I stated, to alleviate these two existing on-air sites, which were built rather tall because they were built before all the new construction happened years ago, before all this, before all new residences and businesses started going into Asbury. So normally a cell site in this area wouldn't be as tall, but they were designed and they were built taller than, this is another reason why we were trying to fulfill this gap, because these sites, as I stated, can't handle I keep repeating myself, but we have to be in this specific geographic area to alleviate these two sites.
Okay, I'm following you.
Yeah.
But as you know, we know this town very well, and the east side is only really busy from Memorial Day to Labor Day, give or take some weekends. The west side, those residents live there year round. And I hear that is it the client who's telling you that you can only look on the east side?
Well, no, this is because of the fact that we know that we have issues with the network, that when we have, even if it's Memorial Day, right through September, or whenever we have the influx of subscribers, we have to provide coverage to them. And this is a demand that's put on the network.
But there's a demand on the west side.
Right, and as I said, I would look into—
Time out. This application is for this specific site. It's not about a choice between the east or the west side. They've come in for this site. You got to focus on this site. If it's required, if it's needed here, you vote for it or against it. And I understand your questions where you explored that the west side, could you move the antenna closer to the west side, still get the coverage in this side, and so on. I get all that, but it's not an either or situation or a priority situation. It's not that the applicant should be coming in for the west side before the east side.
Well, Jack, I just want to—
That's a red herring. If we get sidetracked on the west side, all right, go ahead. I know where you're going. Go ahead. It's a red herring. Go ahead.
Donna, I'll give you the floor.
I'm sorry, Jack. I mean, I don't want to make it worse.
Okay.
But based on the testimony of Mr. Panetta, it sounds like AT&T's directive is to solve a particular problem for their network.
Yes.
And the FirstNet work is secondary to its regular day in, day out.
We don't know that. We don't know that. That hasn't.
Well, if their focus is to close these gaps on the east side due to influx, so I'm just going to stop there. If they can give us more testimony that says that assures the board members that what they're doing is really AT&T's directive to close all their gaps. They're doing it piecemeal, and this is where we're starting, and the board is satisfied with that, then.
Okay, Donna, let me do some work with Dan. Dan, how is does AT&T just normally constantly issue search rings in towns in order to provide coverage?
Yes.
Do they ever issue have you, in your 20 years experience, ever known AT&T to go in and issue all search rings in all towns to cover a town?
No, not all at once.
Right, and are there search rings constantly being investigated and issued 365 days a year in the state of New Jersey?
Yes, in all municipalities. Mhm.
Is it possible that the radio frequency team is working on other search rings in Asbury Park on the west side?
Yes.
And you wouldn't know about it, correct?
Yes.
And you've agreed to go back and check with AT&T and get back to Donna or the board on exactly what the build plan is there, correct?
Yes.
But going into a town to cover an area where you need it, does AT&T ever look and say, oh, there's 3 areas, let's prioritize the area, or do they just issue the search ring and go in?
No, it's not prioritized in that manner.
Okay, so it's not done purposely in any town, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we are back to having board members ask questions of the real estate agent, Christopher Basso. Where Brittany, you're completed with your questions, I assume?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Russell, I have a question for him, if you have a minute.
Who's this talking?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Bonnie Knock.
Bonnie, you were next on my list, but since you have something to say, I will give you the floor. Go right ahead.
Thanks. Mr. Basso, you said you were turned away by some landlords. You didn't hear back. You sent the emails or you stopped in. A lot of these are condos. So did you approach the board or did you approach the management companies? And how did it work with not with the apartments or ones with landlords, but the ones that have, condo boards?
Well, when if I need to get access to figure out how to send the letter, I look at the tax roll, or I literally go to the door. Many times there'll be some information about how to contact the condominium association, and that's how I actually found out for 321 Sunset. So yes, I'm not soliciting one individual or sending a letter to one person inside there, asking them to pass along the information. So I go into the tax rolls, I look and find out what information I can in person, or or if there's any information as to how I can contact the building, and I do it that way.
Okay. So you obviously were in touch with some management companies within the town.
Yes. That's how I came across Townsman Management, and how I came to find how to talk to 321 Sunset through her. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I have.
It's my pleasure. Yes.
Tim, do you have any questions for Mr. Basso? Tim, are you on?
Oh, no.
You're good? All right.
I'm good, yeah. No.
Okay. Dan Harris, any questions for Mr. Basso? Danny?
Yeah, I have it.
Okay.
So hopefully, or the other man, Dan, one of you I would like to ask the question to. Is it just the way you're putting up these towers, is the service there unreliable at this time?
I'm sorry, this is Judy. We didn't hear your question.
Okay, I wanted to know, is the service in the area where you want to propose to put up the towers unreliable at this time?
Yes, that's what Dan Panetta testified to. Yes.
Okay, and that's based on the amount of people that are living there now. And if there's any expansion, then there would be even worse service. That's what you're telling us?
Yes, Dan, that's correct, right?
Correct, yes.
And how many people would you be planning to service at that point by expanding the service?
This whole geographic area will be covered that I'm tracing with my cursor if the site were approved and integrated.
Okay, but the whole geographic area will be covered, but as we know, there's always expansion in Asbury on that side of town. How many customers do you plan to serve at that time?
Customer, I just look at the coverage. I do not know what customer base is or any of that. I don't have that information.
But Dan, in your professional opinion, the putting up this site will cover however many people are in the area?
Correct, and as well as was stated, influx of subscribers that come into the beach area. Yes, influx of subscribers that come to the beach area.
That's in the summertime, not in the wintertime.
So I can't hear him very well.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now a little better.
Okay. So in the wintertime, then this area will be underused, right? Correct?
Well, it would be less subscribers, but as I stated, this area is being developed. So there are people that are living there. More people will be living there. So that's to plan for that as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Yes.
All right, Christopher Gonzalez, do you have any questions for Mr. Basso? Christopher?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we can. Yes, go right ahead.
Besides buildings, and I'm seeing that you guys are focusing and putting these antennas on top of buildings. There's any other site besides buildings that you can probably put these antennas?
Are you asking, are there I don't want it to be clear, that are there other types of structures that we would consider utilizing? I suppose the answer is yes, but it all has to pass radio frequency engineers' guidelines as to height and location. So, I mean, I'm not aware of any structure other than the ones that I solicited that might be suitable. There's no towers or there are no existing towers in the area, so there's no water tanks in that immediate vicinity, save for the one to the north, which we're on. So I don't see any alternative structure that I could even approach.
Now, there's at least two buildings that I know they used to work actually with. You guys are AT&T, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Optimum used to use two towers, which one of them used to be the one that I live on right now, which is a 510 DLA Drive. The contract expired and everything. Do you try to contact these management companies again?
What was the address that you're referring to?
510 DLA Drive.
Hold on a moment. 510 Deal Lake. Let's see. I mean, it's not since, it's been quite some time since I explored 510 Deal Lake. And it's likely because, well, it's because I got some interest with 321 and the radio frequency engineers liked it. So I don't negotiate multiple deals when a property is selected. We put all our resources towards designing and negotiating that particular property.
So there's no suitable sites like on the ground. The town can allow you to build probably an antenna. And like when I drive on the parkway, I see these beautiful antennas that are decorated like a tree, and they're like beautiful. They look very nice. And they're antennas, cell phone towers and everything. That is maybe an area that the town could probably tell you where to build something like that.
I can answer that. The town, the only public property the town owns, because remember it's all in a redevelopment now, is the water sewer treatment plant. and we can't build there because we would take up their parking spaces for their employees. So the town only has control of that property, and we can't build there. We did discuss it with the town. But we would take up their parking lot, or most of it.
Okay, no more further questions. Thank you.
Okay, we're back to our board professionals. Donna, do you have anything else to add at this point?
Sorry, no, I'm good.
Okay. Jason, Doug, anything for these witnesses?
This is Jason. No further questions for these witnesses.
Thanks, Jason.
I have something.
Yes, Jack?
Pardon me. Mr. Basso.
Yes.
Yeah. You testified from a list of properties, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Since you testified from that list and the responses or a lack thereof, you're going to have to supply all that information to the board so the board members can look at it to verify your testimony.
Of course, it's not a problem.
Okay, that's all I have.
Great, thanks.
Russell, I'm
Yes.
sorry, this is Irina. Before we move on, there were still some attendees that had questions. So if we can please go back to them at this point.
To the public attendees?
Yes.
Okay, yes, absolutely. And we're still limiting this to the testimony for these two witnesses.
I would suggest, if I may, I'm sorry for the interruption. I would suggest that we get the train back on the track, that we actually have the people ask questions of the first witness first, finished with that witness.
Okay.
Then go to Mr. Basso, because he's now the second witness, because you're going to go back and forth, and it's going to get very, very confusing.
I like that idea. Thank you, Jack. So anyone of the public that would like to ask questions of Mr. Panetta, who is the engineer that has testified about coverage and placement, you can please raise your hand and you can ask questions now.
Okay, and if you don't mind, this is Irina Gasparian again. I'm going to go back to the person that had their hand raised, but we didn't hear from them. Phone number 774-3510. Go ahead and speak. Anyone there? Again, that's phone number ending in 3510. Okay, all right, and one last person, phone number ending in 3350. Please state your name and ask your question for Mr. Panetta.
Ernest Magnoli, 400 Deal Lake Drive, apartment 5D, Asbury Park, New Jersey. Mr. Panetta, you stated you, I believe, tried 400 Deal Lake Drive, the Santander?
No, I'm the one that said that.
Mr. Magnoli, that's the wrong witness. This is questions for Mr. Panetta, the first witness.
Okay. So now it's so confusing because there's two people. No. So now we have to try and figure out who said what. Why don't you just let us ask the question of the two people, and then whoever it was, they can answer it. Because the way you're saying now, we have to go back and figure, well, what did the first witness say 20 minutes ago? And what did the...
It's simple. If you ask a question, and if you ask a question and that witness can't answer it, he'll tell you he can't answer it, and we'll have you ask it of the next witness. That's all. We're not going to go back and forth between witnesses. We're not going to do that.
Can't.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Magnoli.
So I can or I can't ask a question, and either testimony can answer. I can't.
You cannot.
Mr. Panetta, we already stated that that's the other witness. So go ahead, and do you have any questions for Mr. Panetta? Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I have a lot of questions. So right now the tower is on the sewer plant, yes?
Just for clarification, people keep saying tower. They're not towers, they're antennas on the roof of a building. So yes, there are a couple antennas on the roof of the sewer department building, yes.
Okay. Can they stay there?
No, the city has said no, they cannot. They're only there temporarily.
The city said no? Don't you pay income to put them on the?
Attorney for AT&T, so I don't live in Asbury Park.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
You're about to ask me, you pay taxes, can't you tell them? No, I don't pay taxes in Asbury Park, I'm sorry.
Ask you if you pay taxes.
I do pay taxes.
I didn't ask you. I didn't ask you if you pay taxes.
You're
Oh, I'm
anticipating.
sorry,
a question
never
that
mind, I
hasn't been asked.
misunderstood your question. Go ahead.
Oh, this is going to be some labor.
No,
if
Ernest, let's start over. Ask your questions of the
Okay.
witness.
All
I'm
right, I
sure the
said,
right person-
can they stay on the sewer plant?
Can
If
Mr.
if you don't want to call it a tower, excuse me, the antennas. Okay, so you're saying no, the city basically said no. In other words, they evicted you. You're
No.
saying go find another
No,
site.
now you
We don't
characterize
want.
the testimony. Stop. Ask your question to Mr. Panesso. If he can answer it, he will. Okay? I hear
Mr.
your question.
Panesso.
Ask that question.
Mr. Panetta.
Mr. Magnoli, just 1 second, you've been muted. Please let Mr. Serpico finish what he was saying before you speak. Go ahead, Jack.
Oh, I'm fine. I just want to have Ernest ask the question of the witness. The questions are fair questions, but just ask it for this witness. That's all, you know.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Magnoli. Ask your question.
Okay, so you said that my characterization as a tower is more suited to their antenna, their cell phone antennas, correct? And right now I guess they're on top of the sewer plant, correct?
Daniel Panesso, yeah, there's a temporary site.
Okay. They're on top of the sewer plant. Okay, I get that. And in fact, you, since you're a business, you pay the city to have them on there, yes? Okay, I know you do, so let me move on. So now what you're saying is the reason you don't keep them there, are they doing the job there that's necessary? Are they filling in that area for you where they are now?
For Daniel Panesso, for the record, for the RF coverage, the site is the water tank rooftop does not provide sufficient coverage as does this proposed location. No, it's much lower in height, and it does not provide this similar footprint of coverage that this proposed installation will provide.
So then why did you take it in the first place if it doesn't provide the coverage?
We have, Daniel Panesso, for the record, we have had a temporary solution for many years now. One was a cell on wheels in different locations to provide coverage for this area. And this is being proposed as a permanent solution to provide coverage to the area.
Okay, so I guess I keep getting back to the same thing. What was the rationale why the city said, in other words, you're talking about building 80-foot antennas on top of that sewer plant. That's going to be pretty high.
No, sir.
And
this is, the address is 321 Sunset Avenue.
no, okay. I'm talking about the sewer plant, sir. I'm still talking about the sewer plant. And I'm saying it seems like it's been functioning for a few years, correct?
Dan, are you?
Is that a difficult question? I don't get it.
Can I please interrupt here since I'm the attorney doing the questioning for my witnesses? Dan, are you familiar with the sewer treatment plant that was only put up a couple weeks ago?
I know the location and I know the height, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Dan, the antennas were put up approximately 2 or 3 weeks ago?
Yes.
Is it a full array of 20 antennas or just a
No.
couple antennas to kind of patch up and be able to make sure there's emergency services until a permanent site was approved?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so now we get to a different point. So now, the ones on the sewer plant have only been there for 2 weeks.
Correct, a couple weeks.
Okay. Couple of weeks, 3 weeks, whatever, a month. They're just there. So now I come to a question. You mentioned 400 Deal Lake Drive, and then, am I correct, didn't you? And you mentioned 200 Deal Lake Drive, and you mentioned 510.
Time out. Did this witness mention those two properties?
I mentioned 400 Deal Lake Drive, yes.
Who is that?
So did
Not you, Chris.
Basso.
Don't answer. I'm asking this witness.
Daniel Panessa, for the record, no, I did not.
Okay, so you're asking the wrong witness.
Amazing. Okay, so now at the location where you're talking, it's a residential area. I believe it's a 6 or a 7-story, the Esplanade, and you're claiming that that's the perfect spot. In other words, technically, the antenna is going to go up. It's going to be 78 feet above the 7th floor, correct?
Daniel Panessa, for the record, that's correct.
Time out.
Okay.
Did you say that this is going to be 78 feet above the top floor?
No, at the height of the antenna, I think he meant.
Okay, so I think you better listen to the question before you answer it.
Okay, so how far above the 7th floor will the antenna rise?
The antennas are mounted on the roof. They're mounted right on the roof.
That's what I mean. How far above the roof will the antenna go up into the air?
That'll be another question for our civil engineer. He'll be up after me.
All right, you didn't say 78 feet before?
Approximately 78 feet. I'm telling you that's what the approximate height is. But if you want the exact
Okay,
dimension.
all right. So yeah, you did say that. So now we're talking 70 feet up and then another 7. So we're talking 150 feet in the air.
No,
for
sir,
this
sir.
antenna.
On the roof, exactly at 78 feet. Approximately 78
Yeah, but
feet. That's how tall the
but
building
it's above the rooftop. Don't you count that? In other words, people from the west side of Asbury, when you put 78 feet antenna on top of a 7-story building, they're going to be able to see it from Neptune.
Okay, I'm sorry. As the attorney for AT&T, I'm going to have to object here. First of all, the radio frequency engineer keeps telling you it's the civil engineer, and he keeps telling you the antennas are not going to be 78 feet above a 70-foot building. So I think we need to wait for the civil engineer to go over the exact dimensions of the building and the antennas, since the radio frequency engineer only testified as to coverage.
And okay, so you said you exhausted, I guess, with your team, a 3-year effort to find other buildings, and certainly there are taller buildings nearby that, I guess, are you saying don't qualify?
Okay, so that is not, we're trying to finish up Dan Panessa, our radio frequency engineer. The alternative sites, you want to ask for the second person, Christopher Basso. So do you have any other, Jack, I'm sorry, I'm taking over. Do you have any additional?
Go right ahead.
Dan Panessa, do you have any more radio questions? If not, we'll move on to another person to ask radio frequency questions or to the real estate guy.
No, I have other questions.
Okay, radio frequency questions, go ahead, please, and ask Dan Panessa.
Yeah, I do. Okay, I do. Wasn't it Mr. I don't know his name, but Mr. P that said we're talking FCC approved, correct?
Dan, does AT&T have an FCC license to operate?
Yes, they do.
Okay. Does FCC have anything to do with health?
Dan is not testifying to health. He has said nothing about it. That is the next witness.
Okay, then let me ask the question another way.
Okay.
Other than the FCC operating permit, did you try to get a DCA health, state health, any other type of permit to operate, since this sits on a residential occupied building with residents year-round? So it's a yes or no question. Were there any other
You can't
attempts?
tell her how to answer. You can't tell her how to answer. Let her answer your question. She's the attorney for the applicant. She has every right to do what she's doing. Go right ahead.
You have to wait for another witness. As the attorney for the board keeps telling you, you only ask questions what Dan testified to. He only has certain information as an expert. You need to wait for the witness to testify regarding FCC and energy output and all of that. We haven't gotten that far yet.
You know, this is so convoluted now. I forgot what the first expert witness actually, he's an engineer, correct?
He's a radio frequency engineer, not a civil engineer.
All right, a radio, okay. So all he's testifying to at this is that this site is ideal for what AT&T wants to do, that it will work and it will accomplish your goals. Is that correct?
Yes, that was
The other question, yeah, okay.
Oh,
The other question,
please do not talk over me. If I let you ask the question, please let me finish. That is what Mr. Panetta testified to, yes.
so somehow I'm going to get to ask these questions, and then at the end, the public is going to be able to make comments also.
Yes, Ernest. Yes, correct. Like we always do and have been for the last few years.
Who is that? You have to identify yourself.
This is Russell Lewis. I'm the acting chair tonight. Yes, the rules of our meeting tonight have not changed. You ask questions based on testimony only, and then you get to then make comment at the end on what you think about the proposal. But right now we are just narrowly asking questions of these witnesses based on their testimony.
No. Oh, no. At first, of the witness. You said one at a time. So now that I'm finished with this witness, the frequency engineer, now don't I get to talk to the realtor, ask questions?
If there's no one else ready to ask questions of this witness, we'll get the other witness ready, and you will be in line to ask him questions.
Are you done asking questions of this witness based on his testimony, the radio frequency engineer?
I would have been done, but I just got so confused that I'll just say I'm done. So
okay.
Okay, great. So Mr. McNally, I've muted you now. I'm gonna go back one more time to this person that has their hand raised again. Let's try this again. Phone number ending in 3510. Please state your name.
Did you say 3510?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Please.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello? Hello?
Can you hear us?
She can't hear us. So I've just muted her. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm going to try messaging her directly. And if that doesn't work, then I'm so sorry. We won't be able to hear her question.
We have to.
I can try calling her phone number.
Could she?
When you speak to her, would you also ask her if she heard my instructions regarding the scope of cross-examination?
Yes, just one moment. Okay, I cannot message her. So I'm going to mute myself and I'm going to try calling her directly on the phone. If you would like to move on to the next witness, I think that would be a good idea.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so then we're going to hold.
Why don't you call her and find out if we can get her on board? Let's try and keep some order to this thing instead of jumping back and forth, because we're going to wind up right where we were before.
Okay, just one moment.
I guess I'll take this opportunity to say happy birthday to Catherine.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you, Russell.
Happy birthday.
How sad. You have to spend the night of your birthday on a Zoom call?
No, it was actually, it was over the weekend. It was on Saturday.
Oh, it was on Saturday. Okay.
Very nice.
We really should all sing.
No, that's okay. But thank you very much.
I was going to apologize if you were spending it with us, and I'm sorry. But
let's see, it was thunderstorming and it was gloomy and yeah, Memorial Day weekend. But thank you very much.
Okay, I'm sorry, everyone. Just to let you know, this is Irina Gasparian. I did speak to the attendee, the public attendee that was on the phone. She could not hear any of the testimony. She could only hear the public questions for some reason. I believe it was her phone that is the issue because we don't have any other issues that are similar to this. So I've asked her to call back on another phone or device. Let's see if that works. She did state that she does not have any questions at this time, so we can move on.
Who is she?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get her name.
All right, what's the phone number?
I think it's 3510.
3510.
Okay, and she said she didn't have any questions for Mr. Panetta.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
All right, so we're moving on to additional testimony from
No,
another witness,
Moving
or
on to cross of Mr. Basso, unless there are other members of the public that have questions for Mr. Panetta. Irina? No, there are no, you're muted.
No.
All right, so then if we're all done, I would assume we go to the next witness.
Dan, can you please remove your propagation maps? You're
Yes, I'll-
sharing the screen.
Daniel Panesso, stop sharing.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay, so now we move on to Mr. Basso's cross. Correct?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, is that okay? Then Irene,
Yes.
that works?
yes, and
Okay.
do we start with,
Whomever
well, we've,
she has in queue, I guess.
okay.
Okay, we only have one person with their hand up. That's Mr. Mignoli.
Okay, okay.
Mr. Mignoli, go ahead and speak.
Hello?
Mr. Mignoli, you're asking your question now for Mr. Chris Basso, the program manager.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, Ernest McNolly, 400 Deal Lake Drive, Apartment 5D, Asbury Park, New Jersey. So you stated that for this Esplanade, if I could call it that, because I'll just call it the Esplanade, that you have secured and worked out a pre-agreement with the management company.
No, I said I'm in the process of finalizing it, but yes, we're working with them. Yes, sir.
Okay, with the management company. And you mentioned the name Herb. Does that person have a last name?
Yes, it's Townsman. Yep.
That's his last name?
Yes.
No.
Herb Townsman?
Oh, sorry, Fehrenbach. Forgive me. Excuse me, Fehrenbach. Yes.
Okay. So you're in negotiation with Herb Fehrenbach of Townsman Management or Townsman Properties Management, correct?
No, he's their agent, but I'm dealing with the attorney for the Esplanade.
Is that Buckaloo Frizzle Cavina?
Indeed.
Okay. So you indicated that you tried to get in touch with 400 Deal Lake Drive, correct?
Yes.
And nobody got back to you, correct?
Well, at the time, no. That's right. Nobody did get back to me. Now, obviously, I know that Fehrenbach represents them, but at the time, no. I had no contact or no indication that they were interested. Aside from that, it's also on the north end of the the search area. So I probably would not have pressed as hard for those because they were close to an existing site.
Close to, what we're talking about, the Santander?
No, we're talking about the water tank that's a bit to the north of it. You see, I try to get as close to the center as I can.
Sir.
400 Deal Lake Drive is the Santander. Time out before we go down this road. Mr. Basso, 400 Deal Lake Drive is in fact the Santander, correct,
Yes.
Ernest?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and he asked you, if the Santander, he didn't ask you about the water tank, he asked you about the Santander.
No, but I'm trying to explain to him how it is that I came up to start to look at the Santander.
Okay, well, it would be better if you just answered his question and then,
Okay.
yeah. Sorry, Judith.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead, Ernest.
Indicated at Santander, you indicated at Santander, there seemed to be no interest. Nobody really got back to you. Are you aware that Townsman is the same property manager as Esplanade?
Yes, I am, after the fact,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
Mhm.
So now, I'm just trying to understand. You said it's been a laborious effort for 3 years. You named a bunch of properties that I know Townsman manages.
Mhm.
And the only one that you said that they got back to you on was the Esplanade. Why not on Bangs? Why not on Santander? Why not on Park Avenue? Why not about the other 15 that they manage? Why didn't they get back to you? Why did they only get back to you?
I have
What?
I have no idea.
You have no idea.
No.
Why
No,
wouldn't
the offer letters have monetary figures in them. Maybe they weren't good enough. I can only surmise that maybe they weren't attractive enough to warrant the callback.
Chris, I'm going to stop you there. You have no idea why they didn't get back to you, correct?
No, I don't.
Okay, that's your answer.
That's my answer. Okay.
Okay, you have no idea. You're the realtor, correct? You work for, I guess, the AT&T division as finding sites as a realtor, correct? Correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Is Townsman Properties, are they also realtors? Do you know?
I believe so. Yeah. Or their management company.
Okay, so just a question, and this is not a trick question.
Okay.
When you indicated, and you finally, in all the buildings in Asbury, I think they manage probably 20 or 30, but anyway, the only one where they said, we'll talk to you is the Esplanade, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Are you telling me that all of their other buildings that they manage are not technically as good or suited to this project? Is that why the...
I'm sorry, that question's irrelevant to this witness. This witness is only testifying to who he contacted and who responded. He's not testifying to what buildings are better or not better. He has testified that whoever manages those buildings did not get back to him. That's the limit of his testimony.
Okay, I withdraw it. Okay, so now you indicated that you're going to be putting the cell tower on the top of the 7th floor of the Esplanade, correct? And that's what you're proposing to, as you said, the building owner, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is Townsman Properties the building owner?
I'm going to object here. He said he's been negotiating with the attorney for the property owner. That's who he's negotiating with.
Okay, and who is the property owner?
The Esplanade.
In other words, wait a minute. In other words, we have Townsman Management, the management company. We have their lawyers, Buckaloo, Frizzle, Covina.
Okay.
And now you're saying that Townsman and Buckaloo Frizzle meet with you relative to the building owner about getting a lease to put this tower on the top of their building. And what I'm asking you is, Townsman and Buckaloo, who's their client? You said it's the building owner. So I'm asking, who's the building owner?
The building owner is the Esplanade. They are a condominium association.
Correct. And isn't that a condominium? Correct.
Indeed.
And who are the owners collectively? I mean, who are the owners of the building collectively, including the common areas?
Condominium association.
Which is made up of what?
That's who I'm.
I'm sorry, I'm going to object here. The attorney is representing to AT&T that he represents the property owner of the association. That's the testimony.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so now when you spoke before, when you said you were speaking to the building owner, you meant the association represented by the management company and the lawyers for the association.
I don't know why you keep going. I'm not quite understanding where you're going.
Well, okay, I'll tell you why. Did you speak to any condominium owners who would
Yes,
be directly
I met with them I met with the board on one occasion, and I met in the lobby with, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 of them on one evening. I want to say in January, maybe. So yes, I have met them, and they have met me.
Oh, so you met with 20 owners at the Esplanade?
I suppose it was about that many. We all kind of met.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. And you met informally. You met informally in the lobby.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. No, I understand, but it wasn't an official, open public meeting of the association.
I'm going to object here. Chris, stop a minute, please. I'm going to object. Open public meeting doesn't account for an association. I have no idea where you're going with this. He's represented who he's negotiating with, and that's the extent of his testimony.
So now back to Townsman, the Realtors and Management Company. When the Esplanade was chosen, at that time, did they show you the multitude of other buildings that they manage?
Irrelevant.
Why?
Okay, I withdraw it. I withdraw it. You said it's irrelevant. I withdraw it. Okay. Are you aware of any other suitable properties in Asbury, whether managed by the Association of Townsmen or anybody else, that you tried, maybe one time, maybe two times, that didn't get back to you, that you could possibly go back to now again?
That I could
maybe make a better. Yeah, in other words, if you wanted to come to Santander, I'm an owner there. I'll make sure you get to our open meeting. I know we only have them every 2 years, but I'll make sure you get a chance to present to the owners, because it sounds like you're going to be paying income to wherever you put these towers on private property, right? And if that's the case, I'd like a chance. My building, Santander, we could use the money, and I'll get you in the meeting. And we have a higher building. You could put a smaller antenna, and it would probably cover a 5-mile area. I mean, it's a 9-story building.
Okay, Jack, I've gone ahead and muted Mr. Magnoli because he's just commenting at this point.
Yeah, he's trying to get the witness to go someplace else.
Okay, we're going to try one more time, ask him if he has any other questions for this witness.
Yeah.
Mr. Magnoli, do you have any other questions for this witness?
Yeah, I do, and I feel like I'm being rushed off, but anyway. So we established that fact. Now we're establishing that you know who you're dealing with.
What fact did we establish? What fact did we establish?
Well, we established the fact that he's dealing with Herb Fernbach, the CEO of...
I can tell you, the extent of my dealing with Mr. Fernbach is that he let me and my engineers in the building.
They've already testified, and counsel has backed it up, that they're dealing with counsel for the homeowners association, the condominium association.
Mr. Serpico, I know that, but I was the one that elicited these exact details. Before that, he was just saying some guy Herb, some building, some.
I get what you're saying.
Now we know who it.
We know, we just established who they're dealing with on behalf of the homeowners, and that would be the association and their counsel.
Really? Who established it? You or me?
No, don't keep asking me the same questions over and over. You already got your answers from the attorney. That's who it is.
I know, but you took credit for me establishing.
I'm not taking credit for anything. Go on to your next question, please.
Stop yelling.
Well, because we're not getting anywhere, and it's now 9 o'clock. Let's go. Keep asking questions.
Oh, and that's my fault.
Questions. Please ask questions. Please. Please.
Okay. Okay. So you indicated that you're working on a deal for this site, and at some point, it'll culminate in a lease, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You're a realtor, correct?
I am
We know
not a
that, yes.
licensed New Jersey realtor. I do a specific, I facilitate a specific real estate deal. Mostly I manage the project and the process.
Okay, I understand. So you're a realtor, but you're not a licensed realtor in New Jersey.
I'm not a realtor. I didn't say that.
I'm sorry, this line of questioning is irrelevant. Chris was never supposed to be a realtor. His credentials are that he's been doing this for 20 years and he's represented AT&T and he finds property. That's the basis of what Chris does, and that's his credentials.
Okay. Okay, so that's fine. His credentials are he's been doing this for 30 years. That's okay. But I thought somewhere along the line he represented himself as a realtor.
No, he did not.
No, I did not.
Okay. I'm just asking. Okay, so I'm just trying to understand. Okay, so you're trying to you're close to negotiating a lease. I guess it depends on the approval of this application, correct? In other words,
The terms
they're ready to go.
The property
Is it
owner-
contingent? Of course.
You asked a question, now please let me answer it. The leases for AT&T are proprietary leases. We will not discuss the terms and the conditions of the lease with you. We have property owner consent to be here, and you have there's an application before the board.
Okay. So you did state that you named a bunch of buildings that are right nearby. You named 601 Bangs, didn't you?
I think I did, yeah. Let me look.
You know who manages that, correct?
Let me look. Wait, what was the number? 601 is not on my list.
What did you say, Bangs Avenue? I thought you said 601 Bangs.
That was not, that's not on my list. I think was it Mr. Gonzalez? Christopher, he had the same first name. Forgive me.
Daniel Panessa for the record. 601 Bangs Avenue is an existing on-air site south.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Sorry, I did not.
And
have it on my list.
the building that that Ernest, Daniel Panessa for the record, the Santander is north of our proposed location, which will not work for us. It's too close to the existing on-air site to the north. I think that's what Ernest is trying to get at. Why are we in this particular location? We need to be in this location to fulfill the gap in coverage.
Okay, Dan, thank you. Thanks.
We cannot go too far north. We have to stay in this vicinity, Ernest. We can't just arbitrarily pick a building.
Stop, thank you.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay, Jack and I are trying to move this along.
Okay, so what other buildings right nearby did you try and contact? In other words, it needs to be near where the Esplanade is.
You asked him a question. Let him answer your question.
Well, I gave a whole list of sites that I had tried after 206 First Avenue, 213 Second Avenue, 206-210 Second Avenue, 210 5th Street. That's the Asbury, 321 Sunset, which you know about, 615 Park, 510 Deal Lake. I think I tried for that one. Yeah, 200 Deal Lake. Again, I think all those were too far close, as Dan had just mentioned a moment ago. 1701 Ocean, 1501 Ocean, 101 Asbury. That's all the way to the other end. 400 Deal Lake, and then 610 Sewell.
So how many buildings, if the Esplanade is the perfect technological and it sounds like real estate deal, it fits the bill perfectly. How many buildings within 500 feet, and there's a lot of them, did you also contact?
These are all the buildings I tried to contact.
No, I know, sir, but you told me First Avenue. That's on the other end of town. You told me Second Avenue. That's all the way on the other end of town. I'm saying right near the Esplanade. Right near the Esplanade.
Tell me,
If you
I don't
take a
think there's another
baseball,
building like it. I don't know what, I'm not sure what you're getting at.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Mr. Magnoli. He has mentioned all of the buildings he has contacted. Whether some are close to it or not, those are all the buildings he's contacted. He's answered your question.
Yeah, he did answer my question, but it was specific to within 500 feet of the Esplanade.
Well,
now, First Avenue.
I'm sorry, finish. I am so sorry. Finish, please.
No, it's okay. In other words, he mentioned the Asbury Hotel. I think he mentioned the Ocean Club Hotel and condos, etc.
Yep.
And they were mentioned. No, you didn't.
No, I'm agreeing with you. Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay.
we're going to stop everything right here.
So,
Mr., you know where the streets are and what's there. So for him to list exactly what's next to it and what's not next to it, what's further away, he's given you a list of everything he has contacted. He's answered your question. Do you have another one?
yes. Yeah, I do. So for the Asbury Hotel, what was the outcome of your attempt to? I mean, to me, that's could be a better spot than the Esplanade. But what was the result of your trying to reach them? Because I don't know. I go in there all the time. I could
Just ask the question.
Okay.
Don't get into because.
Okay. What what went wrong with talking to the Asbury Hotel?
I dropped off. Wait a second. I'm not sure. Do I have to answer that?
Well, wait, hold on. Chris, you just have to say how many times you tried to contact them, that's all.
I was in there on at least 2 occasions with a letter in hand, an offer letter in hand, at least 2 occasions.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Okay, so you left a letter of intent 2 times, I guess, with the hotel manager, correct?
Yes, I suppose, or whomever was at the desk.
Was ever at the desk. Okay. And then at the Ocean Club, same thing? How many visits and
Was that
attempts
the new
there?
building?
Yes, sir. The big, I think it's 17 floors, the big one.
I probably spent over a year trying to get them to move along on a site. And I probably burned about a year because they changed their mind about all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Too busy building the building, which I suppose.
You do know they're the same owners, correct?
Yes, I do know that. It's iStar.
Okay. So in other words, iStar flat wouldn't talk to you.
We had, I think at one point in time, we had a temporary site on where they kept their buildings. No, I spoke plenty to iStar, but iStar went silent. That sometimes happens in agreements or during the course of business.
Mm-hmm. In any of these sites that you propose or looked at, et cetera, are you aware that there's other contracts out there on buildings with Verizon, T-Mobile? In other words, Asbury is starting to get antenna fever. If you look on top of buildings.
You're testifying. Stop.
Okay. Sorry.
So Chris, Basso, bottom line, do you know of any other carriers on any of those buildings?
I mean, I see the antennas. Do I know exactly whose they are? Not unless I got up there on the rooftop.
Okay, great. Perfect answer. Thank you. Enough.
The answer's, yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Are you aware that you mentioned 400 Deal Lake Drive that we have T-Mobile on our roof?
I didn't know it was T-Mobile. I probably did identify because I saw antennas on it.
Well, it would be nice if townsmen told you.
Panetta just said it's too close to, it's not the right area.
Okay. So if it's not the right area, why did you even bother going there?
You see, when you're desperate to find locations,
Don't answer the question.
Chris, stop.
Don't answer the question. It's an irrelevant question. You answered it. You told them when you went there, why you didn't. The other witness testified that it's not necessary. It won't work. So it's an irrelevant question.
Okay. Is it your opinion that all the sites that you visited were suitable sites.
I'm sorry, Chris is a real estate person. He's not RF. He isn't anything else. He doesn't have an opinion. No offense, Chris. He went out to the sites and tried to negotiate a lease. That's it.
Well, I thought he works with the engineer for technical, and
No,
together.
he's not technical. He has explained that he gives the stuff to
No,
the
not him. No.
Please let me finish. He explained that he gets the search rings, he goes out and tries to find sites, and he gives it back to RF. RF makes the decision. He is not a radio frequency engineer.
Okay. Can anybody hear me? No?
Sure.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, all right. So the Esplanade is from what you were asked to do, from your point, the realtor, you stated that you were working for a long time and that the reason for this application is this seems to be the only place and the only building that's suitable and is willing to make a deal. I think that's what you said.
Well, it's the only building that that gave me any positive feedback, and that I'm able to sit and talk to the board about it right now. So yeah.
Okay. Okay, and in fact, when AT&T and your clients, et cetera, install something, it's a lease agreement and it's income to the building. So I guess you know that they just did a $2 million assessment on that building.
Testifying.
So this could
Testifying. Stop testifying. If you've
Well,
got a
no, but
question-
I'm saying.
No, you're characterizing testimony in the form of a question. Ask your question direct. Just ask him a question that's relevant to his testimony. Ask it.
Are you aware that that building is right now undergoing a $2 million assessment for major renovations?
Irrelevant.
And it's had.
Right, I object. It has
No,
nothing.
wait, you just told me.
I told you to ask questions, but they've got to be relevant. Who cares? What's that have to do with this application? It has nothing to do with his testimony. Nothing.
Does not interfere with our lease.
Well, I beg to differ. I think
You don't have to
the
agree.
management.
I'm not asking you to agree with me. I'm not asking you to agree with me. I'm not asking that question.
Mr.
Okay, well-
McNally, do you have any other questions for this
Yeah,
witness?
absolutely. But the way Mr. Serpico seems to run these meetings, he badgers people. So I'm finished. And I'll.
Thank you, Mr. McNally. Okay, Russell, proceed, please.
Okay. Jack,
Yes.
are we in a position to allow this witness to leave and bring on another witness? Where are we at?
There are
right
no other questioners in the public that have any questions of the witness. I guess so.
Or do we have anyone
As long as
else?
Council doesn't have any redirect yeah.
Do we have anyone else in the public, Irina, that's looking to question this witness?
No.
Okay. Judy, how would you like to proceed?
Sure, great. Okay, Dan.
I hope I can call you Judy now.
Please. Okay, Dan Panetta, you're gone. Chris Basso, love you both. You're both out of here. Okay, my next question will be less controversial. And that's Dave Collins. Dave, I saw your face a couple times.
Hi, I'm here.
Oh, yay. Okay, Dave, raise your right hand.
Okay, now that's Dave Collins is compliant.
Compliance guy.
Okay, Dave, raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony about the giving this matter be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Okay, state your name for the record, spell it, and then we'll let Judy take over.
Dave Collins, last name Collins. Do you need my business address?
Yes, please.
Pinnacle Telecom Group, 14 Ridgedale Avenue, Cedar Knolls, New Jersey.
Dave, can you give me your educational professional background and what you did in regard to this application?
Yes. I hold a Bachelor of Science in Industrial Technology from City College of New York. For the past, now it's 21 years, I have been an employee of Pinnacle Telecom Group. We're a telecommunications consulting firm that specializes in making this type of assessment that we will get into, i.e. compliance with the FCC rules and regulations governing exposure to humans. I have testified over 1,000 times.
Thank you. We accept your credentials. Please move forward.
In the interest of speed, thank you.
Let's get to the bottom line here. Dave, you did a study of the antennas and the equipment on the building, and your study was based upon the energy output pursuant to the FCC and the New Jersey Radiation Protection Act, correct?
That is correct.
And for the record, your report, which is all numbers and very boring, has been marked as A2.
That is also correct.
Bottom line on your report, with the 20 antennas and equipment proposed up there, how does the energy output of this site compare with the standards of the FCC and New Jersey?
Expressed as a percentage of what's permitted, with 100% being the maximum level of radio energy permitted. We used an FCC-approved formula as found in their rules and regulations to determine the level based on the operating parameters given to us by AT&T for this proposed site. And we came up with a number based on rather conservative calculations that the maximum RF level at the ground level around the site would be 10.3442% of the permitted limit. That is equivalent to 9 times below the limit for the federal government. The New Jersey radiation protection statute is on Jersey's books. It is less stringent, though plenty protective nonetheless. It is 5 times less stringent than the federal level. So in regards to how far below the New Jersey statute's maximum permitted level, we are 45 times below that level. So in either case, the federal or the state level, we are in compliance for this proposed site by a very wide margin.
And then my only other question for you, Dave, is you said that you did a conservative calculation. What does conservative calculation mean?
Okay. We are on the side of caution, but this is also what the FCC recommends, and it is incorporated in the formula that we use. We assume the shortest distance between the antenna mounting height and the ground level. We take into account the 6.5 foot difference of a human being, making it that much closer to the antenna. We assume the antennas are operating at full capacity all the time. We assume a 100% reflection rate off the ground, which is in real world impossible. And we assume no losses of any kind in attenuation between the antenna and it's as if you were standing directly in front of any particular antenna.
Okay,
so you get worst case scenarios.
And your bottom line is we're 45% lower?
I'll reiterate, in terms of a percentage based on the federal level, right. We are 9 times below, specifically as a percentage, 10.3442%. And for the New Jersey, which is, although it's well protective, it is still less so than the federal government. We are 45 times below the New Jersey Radiation Protection Act's maximum permissible limits. Again, in both cases, a wide margin of compliance.
Thank you. That is the only testimony that I have for Dave.
Fantastic. Jill, do you have any questions for Mr. Collins?
No, thank you.
Catherine?
No, thank you.
Brittany?
Just one quick question. So your test, that's only for radiation that you did?
It's for the radio energy level that comes out of the antennas. I'm not sure what you mean by is that all we took. That's all there is.
Okay, you have to explain it to me in layman's terms because I'm nowhere near a scientist. What does it prove?
All right. We have, as a liquid body of living matter, we have an affinity for radio energy. We act like a very poor antenna, receive antenna. Radio energy comes from whatever source. As it hits us, it affects us. It essentially gives you a body temperature increase. How much? Very little. Even at its maximum, it is still 50 times, the maximum permitted limit, the 100% value that I spoke of. Even at that level, we're still 50 times below the known health effect. Bear in mind that the people that developed these standards are all experts in the biological effects of, they didn't achieve this cavalierly. They started this in 1946.
Right. I just wanted to know exactly what it was measuring.
It's measuring radio frequency energy as a form of electromagnetic energy in itself.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Brittany.
It limits how much we're allowed to be exposed to.
Thank you.
Tim, do you have any questions for Mr. Collins?
The test is done from the top of the roof to the ground level, but you got these pictures here that you gave us. What about the people living in the top few floors, and what about the people living in the building next to these?
All right, I did a quick thing while we were doing this, and while Mr. McNally was talking, I did some measurements. I used Google Earth, and there's a measure distance thing that you can use. The nearest building is to the northwest. It's about 52 feet away and several floors below. There is another building to the southeast, and it is almost 90 feet away and a few floors below. At that kind of distance, even with the elevation above the ground, you're certainly not going to exceed the limit.
Okay.
You're not going to jump from 10% up to over 100.
Okay, I understand that.
It will conceivably be higher. We didn't do the tests based on that. We satisfied the FCC's requirements.
Okay.
But I've been doing this for quite some time. I've made assessments for coming up on 9,000 antenna sites throughout the United States, and we've come across this type of question before. At that kind of distance, even though it's an elevated height, the odds of it exceeding the limit approach zero. Okay.
Okay, and does that RF thing, that energy, does that go through the building to the residents below?
Yes. I don't know if you can access my report, which is dated March 25th, 2020, but we give on page 6, I'm sorry if you don't have this.
Okay.
But on page 6, if you do have it, we give a vertical plane pattern of what comes out of an antenna.
Okay.
It looks like a bug splotch on a radar screen, but most of if you were to put the antenna upwards, and antennas look sort of like a box of launch stem roses, that kind of dimension. If you were to hold one up, if you can see my arm, and so that the antenna emanations, here's the front of the antenna, and it comes out to the right, the bulk of the power, the overwhelming amount of the power, comes straight out to the horizon out of the antenna. So, right, with lesser and lesser amounts, even sufficient to make phone calls, but less so and they're called lobes, these things, and they look like lobes if you get to see the report later. As you approach 90 degrees down, the lobes are almost nothing, but there's still something there. But, so what little amount comes out of the bottom of the antenna and goes straight down into the roof. Once it hits the roof, antenna radio energy works very well in air and even better in a vacuum. But that's what they're built, that's how they propagate. They do much less, as you are well aware, if you've ever tried to make a phone call in your house and you start breaking up and you have to walk around the house to find a better signal. The walls hold back, it's called attenuation. The walls hold back a significant amount of the signal, like a masonry wall or a good solid wood wall with wall board and et cetera. Something in the neighborhood of 90%
That's 10 dB. So you have very little. I'm going to speak in dB it's the only time I'll be technical because it's not fair. I'm going to do a little calc, 5, 10, 15, 20, 35. It's about straight down is 35 dB less than what's coming out of this straight out. So that little bit goes down and hits the roof, and then 90% of that is absorbed or reflected off the roof, so that whatever's left comes into the building. We have done calculations and measurements, because there are tools that do perform measurements that the FCC recommends. And either way, measurement or calculations are both acceptable to the FCC. But we have done calculations and measurements of directly underneath the antenna, say in an apartment house similar to this. And you get something right at the ceiling of like 1%. And if you pull if you make calculations further down from the roof, because now you've got further, once an antenna wave goes through something solid, it doesn't come out sort of straight. It comes out sprayed and it's dissipated. It's even weaker once it comes out the other side of the solid substrate. So you end up with, if you get right at the ceiling, you'll get 1 to 1.5%, which is nothing. I will compare this, and another quick science lesson. Everything that has an electron moving in it will emit radio energy, not just an antenna. We use the antennas for communication, but you have incidental radiation coming from things that they have electricity in them. The wiring in your building, your refrigerator, microwave ovens, but not as much as you would think. The microwave oven runs, the refrigerator, which has a rather large compressor motor. We've measured that over the years, and as I say, we've been in business for over 20 years. We keep track of that. The range coming out of a refrigerator, and again, it based age of the refrigerator, type, how old it is, I said that already, and whether or not it's a frost-free refrigerator, that does figure into it. But the number the range from a refrigerator itself in your home that's on all the time is 3 to 7% of the limit all the time. But anything under 100% of any measure of any type of emanation, you're safe forever. It's not cumulative, by the way. It doesn't add up in your body. Your body has the ability to take the thing, changes the energy, gets turned into a form of heat, and your body dissipates it with your bloodstream and breathing, and life goes on. Okay, I hope I answered you.
You did, thank you.
I want you to know that if we were at a hearing and he was sitting next to me, I would have taken his wrist and squeezed it a little bit for him to hurry it up. But I can't do that.
I'm Irish, Judy.
That was good.
I actually enjoyed it. Thank you, Mr. Collins. Bonnie, do you have any questions?
I do not, thank you.
Dan Harris, you with us still, Mr. Harris?
He's muted.
Dan?
You're on mute, Dan.
Still.
Remember to unmute it. No, I'm still, I appreciate your presentation, though, sir. It actually answered my question while I was worried about radiation and the effect on human beings. So thank you very much. So I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Christopher, any questions?
Not at the moment.
Okay, thanks. For our professionals, the board professionals, Donna?
Donna here, no questions.
Thanks. Jason?
This is Jason, no questions. Thank you.
Great. I will open this up to members of the public who would like to ask questions of Mr. Collins and his extremely informative and interesting testimony. I did. I found it fascinating. It was really great.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Thank you, Russell. This is Irina. I'm going to unmute Chris Avalone. He has a question.
Mr. Collins, thank you very much for your testimony. That was probably one of the more technical testimonies we've ever had. I appreciate it very much. I have a question regarding, my understanding is there will be 20 separate antennae installed on the roof. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Five sectors of antennas, 5 groupings of antennas of 4 antennas each.
So a total of 20.
Yes, sir.
Is there a cumulative effect of all of those antennae working in conjunction with each other to produce any unsafe situation?
Okay. The way an RF engineer would set up a sectorized antenna site, it is in order to cover the sorry, I moved my phone. In order to cover the horizon. And in doing so, each individual sector does not overlap with the other sector next to it. You can't stand directly in front of more than one sector at a time, so you can only be exposed to the effects of the antennas of the one sector. And our calculations are based on the input data they gave us and all the sectors are the same, by the way. So that we take one sector, we take all of its operating parameters, put them into the computer at their maximum values, and come up with answers.
So if you were to stand,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, go ahead, please.
If someone was standing directly aside those antennas or underneath those antennas, say in the penthouse, is there any effect derogatory for a health standpoint that somebody could be affected by?
Again, in earlier testimony, I mentioned how an antenna kind of works. It has a front face, a rear, sides, and a bottom and a top. The antenna is generally placed at the edge of the roof, or I believe, unless I'm wrong, I'm thinking they were put behind stealth walls at the edge of the roof. So you can't get in front of them. You can perhaps get to the sides or the back, but and I talked about the difference between how much comes out of the front of the antenna and the bottom of the antenna. The same thing applies to the back of the antenna. It's called the front to back ratio, and it can be as high as 1,000 times less coming out the back than the front. So the exposure risk is greatly reduced in the rear. To the side, perhaps not, but again, that depends on the antenna, and it depends on how close you can get to the antenna on the roof. Do we know whether or not this rooftop is being used for anything else other than a roof? I.e., is there a patio for the residents? And if so, is that patio walled off or fenced off from getting anywhere near the antenna?
Well, there are balconies that are extended out from the penthouse.
Yes, but again, they're below the antenna, and the bulk of the power comes straight out from the antenna, so that the amount of power that comes down from the antenna is, as I say, it can be a 30 dB difference, 28 dB difference. We're talking close to 1,000 times less than what comes out the front. I have never really come across a terraced apartment house having an issue on the top terraces with antennas mounted above and behind them on the roof.
Has there ever been a situation where you've had as many antennas be installed on a particular roof, such as this application?
To be specific, I can't remember where in New Jersey, but it was in not Bergen, but Bergen, Hudson, somewhere in that area. New Jersey. Bless you. Anyway, this was back in the days when we were not, how to put this? We were using frequencies, and the antennas available were specific to a frequency. And if you had multiple frequencies, you needed a separate antenna for each one. Verizon ran as many as 7 antennas in one sector on a roof.
So you've never had an application where you've had this many?
Yes.
Yes.
And the number of antennas is not what matters. It's the input wattage and the frequencies, the input wattage, and the number of channels. If they had a way to do it all in one antenna, it wouldn't change things. The fact that there's multiple antennas doesn't change anything.
All right. So you've had similar applications like this that you've been involved with. Is that correct,
Yes.
Mr. Collins? Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you. No further questions.
Irina, is there anyone else in the public that has any questions for this witness?
I don't see anyone in the public, but Christopher Gonzalez has raised his hand. If we could please go to him.
Sure. Christopher?
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you know the amount of residents that would benefit with this antenna in the area that you're proposing the antenna?
That's beyond my purview.
Okay, no more questions.
All right. So I believe we
I'm sorry, Russell.
Yes.
Now we have 2 hands raised from the public. Let's go to Rita Morano first. Rita, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm a simple person and I'd like a simple answer. There's going to be 20 antennas on that roof? Is
Yes,
that
ma'am.
what we're talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
20.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
how big is each antenna?
You'd have to
That's
talk to
where
the,
the next guy coming, Rita, is the civil engineer, and he can go over.
I
all-
can't understand her. I don't know what she's saying, but it's not coming through.
Irina, can you tell her the next witness?
Yes, Rita, the next witness is the civil engineer, and he will go over your exact question. Do you mind waiting for him to speak?
No.
Thank you.
I'll wait.
Thank you, Rita. Okay, next, next public attendee is Ernest Mignoli. Mr. Mignoli, I'm going to unmute you. Do you have a question for Mr. Collins? Miss,
he's doing.
400
Mr.
Deal Lake
McNally?
Drive. Ernest McNally, 400 Deal Lake Drive, apartment 5D, the Santander. Sir, is the FCC at all relative to radiation readings, etc.? And I pretty much have studied over the years what you're talking about. And is the FCC basically a health rating agency, or are they a communications rating agency that determine if, in fact, as you indicated, the projection and dissipation of radiation, that it's not blatantly going to harm people, but it's not a health agency because it's not saying at even small amounts could that affect someone, especially closer to the towers. Do you know what in other words, the FCC, since you're the professional, is not a health agency, is it?
No.
Okay. And when you say that the FCC has determined that there's no harmful effect to human beings that live, let's say, up on the roof, in the terraces, in the building, and around, what you're offering as that it's safe is the FCC technical aspect of installing those towers. But it's not it's not done by EPA or the Department of Health. It's just the FCC, correct?
That's not correct, sir.
There's a health component of the FCC?
No, but you're going at this the wrong way. You're making an assumption that the FCC made the standard. The FCC adopted the standard, and I will read from my report. The FCC maximum permissible exposure limits represents the consensus of federal agencies and independent experts responsible for RF safety matters. Those agencies include the National Council on Radiation Protection and Measurements, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, the American National Standards Institute, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Food and Drug Administration. In formulating its guidelines, the FCC also considered input from the public and technical community, notably the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. That's where the standards came from.
Am I still on? Okay, I understand. Although I didn't hear you mention anything like American Medical Association or any medical agency of the federal government.
To my knowledge,
that's
those are the ones that were consulted and were involved.
I'm aware. I'm aware. But, you know, let's also say that you were mentioning a lot of things that have to do with the workers that install, like OSHA is really a workplace standard. And POSHA is when there's public employees installing that kind of equipment. And so what you do notice on buildings all over the country is after presentations like this and installations get made and the towers are up and there's people right next to them, usually within 6 months after, signs are put up. Wait a minute. Well, that's my question.
Testifying. You're testifying. You've gone off and testified. It's not a question. You're testifying. Ask a question.
Okay. Do you ever, in any of your installations over the course of your career, after they're installed, put up signs like there are in my building? It says, radiation, be careful. Wear a protective thing. Like if you go out on my terrace, on my top of my Santander building, on both entrances to the top where the people live, on both doors.
Yes, signage is put up as part of an FCC recommendation with their guidelines.
Okay.
If there is the potential to exceed the limit, people must be advised as such and given a method of behavior around the antennas to keep them from being overexposed to radio energy.
Am I still on?
Yes.
Hello?
You?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know when I'm muted or not, but so you're right. They do put on, and what happened is after they were installed. I don't want to testify. Okay. Well.
Sorry, but at the end, Ernest, at the end, when my presentation is all over with my witnesses, you can say whatever you want. You can testify. You can give your opinion on whether or not you believe my witnesses or not. I'm sorry, but it's not part of it now.
Read what my sir. Can you please just tell us what it says on a sign, the typical sign that gets posted?
Well, I don't have one in front of me. They are signs that warn of a notice that say there's the presence of radio energy in the area. There are signs that say caution, where the antenna levels may be higher, and there is even occasionally a sign that says warning, where the antennas there are areas on the roof that exceed limits. Yes, signage is put up. It's part of the FCC. Can I ask you a question, sir? You've been asking me something. Are you?
I don't know.
You answer the question.
Hey, Jack.
You don't get to do that. I understand, but you don't get to do it.
Wait a minute. That's a special moment. Jack, were you sticking up for me?
Yes.
Why would you do that? You don't usually do
Because
that.
my
But
job
anyway.
is to do.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
You asked me a question. My job is to represent the city, the members of the public, the applicant, and keep the applications within the four corners of the law. I don't favor or disfavor anyone, you included. I protect your rights, believe it or not.
I don't believe it.
You don't have to.
I don't believe it.
You don't have to.
Okay, I know I don't have to. I'm just.
Let's move on. Let's go. Go. Ask your questions. Ask your questions.
So, sir, you just asked me a question. Mr. Serpico threw my train of thought off. Just quickly repeat it. Am I unhappy? I think you said.
I'm not permitted to ask the question, so I won't.
Mr. Magnoli, you are muted. I'm going to unmute you. Do you have any other questions for Mr. Collins?
Yes. Okay. Sir, does it ever say on the sign, anyone entering this area, please wear protective gear?
To my recall, I don't recall seeing that. There are also other signs that list as many as 10 guidelines for people to behave while on the roof if there are antennas on the roof. And offhand, I can't list these 10.
I'll tell you what, Ernest, our civil engineer, who's the next guy, will actually tell you what signs are proposed to be placed. So if you can hold off on signs for one more witness, okay?
Well, you know, it seems like we're punting everything to this one civil engineer. And then when we get there, you're going to say, well, oh no, that was the other guy that was you were supposed to ask.
Ernest, I promise you I will not do that. The civil engineer is kind of an important guy. Not that my other witnesses weren't important.
Are you being nice to me?
I'm usually pretty nice. I only get a little testy when you're not nice to my witnesses.
Okay, Mr. Mignoli, do you have any other questions for Mr. Collins?
Okay. Yeah, yes, I do. So in all your installations, I guess, nationally or just in New Jersey? When you reference, you've done thousands of these. Is your area mostly New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, the whole country, the world? Where is your...
It is mostly tri-state, but I have, over the course of 20 years, been in pretty much every other state in the union to perform functions.
Okay. Can you tell me what percentage of split, approximately, not an exact, of residential versus commercial building applications that you do? In other words, how many, whatever, factories or buildings other than residential, what's the average split that you think in your course of all these years has been? You've done 30% residential versus 70 commercial. What is it approximately? And very approximately.
And I can't even give you an answer to that other than a guess based on my memory, which again, in the New York metropolitan area, because most of the buildings in the residential, in any large city, most of the buildings are residential, the antennas end up on residential buildings. All right, in areas that are more suburban, the taller buildings are commercial buildings, so they get a shot at the antennas before. And again, it's not really my purview. It's based on, all right, I've been to a bunch of sites. What's what? But in the New York City area, in New York Metro, I mean from Philly pretty much up to Boston, if you really want to stretch it. Most of the buildings that I have seen are more residential buildings than they are commercial. Way out in the suburbs or in much smaller cities, perhaps a different story.
Am I muted?
No.
Oh, okay. So the top of residential buildings is one of the options. I can understand that. And are also ground installations some of the options?
I'm going to kind of object here, Ernest. No offense.
Okay, okay. All right, I withdraw.
You got muted? You got muted.
Did he get muted? What happened to Ernest?
Yes, I unmuted him. I muted him.
Okay, my objection was the purpose of Dave wasn't to go over all different installations of all types, is that this complies with the FCC and New Jersey Radiation Protection Act. So just trying to move it on, if that's okay with the board.
It is okay with the board. Thank you, Judy.
Are we done with Dave?
Ernest was still asking questions.
Yeah, where?
Mr. Russell, I think Mr. Russell finished me up already. I still have questions. Mr.
No,
Lewis.
you're right. You ask your questions. Ask your questions.
Okay. So are there, from what you do with the FCC, are there any indications that should, let's say, residents live near these towers or antennas, as you mentioned, that it takes into account, I don't know, people who have had cancer, people who are pregnant, etc.? Or is that not one of the things that they use? And then the other question is,
let him answer
tied to
first.
that is,
It's a one at a time.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let him answer the question. Let him answer the question.
Okay. Okay.
The people that designed this thing, and again, I can't claim to have their intelligence level. They're more of a biological bent. But when they designed this, they intentionally made it, and I believe I testified much earlier on this. They made it extremely conservative, the maximum permittable level, once it was determined what level would cause a health effect, not a health hazard, a health effect. They took that particular level and made the maximum permissible level for the general population 50 times lower than that. So even at a 100% permitted level, you're still 50 times below the exposure level that would cause a health effect. So that is part of it. It is, I will give you, let me find, here it is. Recently, there's been some bots or whatever the heck you want to call it on the internet about 5G being linked to the coronavirus. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, the World Health Organization, and the International Commission on Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection came out and said 5G, or for that matter, any other telecommunication system, cannot spread COVID-19, and moreover, there's no scientific basis for the theory that 5G or any other telecommunication might compromise someone's immune system and enable them to get sick. They took into account the fact that there might be people with existing diseases.
No, that's an answer. That's an answer. So then it begs the question, when I go to my dentist and says that this is the ultra lowest amount of radiation that a human being will ever emit when I take dental x-rays, why do they wrap me in lead?
That's apples
and they leave the room. Is it good for me?
It's an irrelevant question.
You are making an unfair comparison between two different forms of radiation. The radiation and the emissions that come out of it, electromagnetic, excuse me, let me start again. The electromagnetic radiation spectrum that we use in order to perform telecommunication is of the non-ionizing band of spectrum. When you go to a dentist or go to get an x-ray at the doctor, you are being subjected to ionizing radiation, gamma ray and x-ray radiation, which is impossible to use in telecommunication. Telecommunication runs from maybe as low as 150 megahertz up to maybe 23 gigahertz. The gamma rays and x-rays, their wavelength is measured molecularly. And that's where their energy comes from. And it is entirely different. And yes, no one questions, and that's the reason that they leave the room and cover you with a lead sheet, is that yes, there is the possibility of getting your immune system compromised and getting possibly cancer from gamma ray exposure or X-ray exposure. But to date, in all the research, there's been nothing that says that the non-ionizing radiation, the radiation of the telecommunication spectrum, can cause any problems with an immune system, an existing disease. It can't cause cancer. There's simply not, the energy and wavelength is not there. However, that's the problem with miscommunication in the internet and the like, is that people confuse X-rays with telephone calls.
So, in other words, this is really just for a cell phone antenna to transmit to, let's say, a cell phone that someone's talking on. It's not what the dentist uses.
Absolutely not.
Good. Then why do they issue warnings on the building where you have the towers? And why do they tell people, be very careful, too much exposure on your ear with a cell phone? There's no research on that?
I'm going to object to this question. That's not what he's here for. He's here to talk about compliance. He isn't with the FCC that requires the signage or what their thinking is.
Well, wait a minute. You just talked about Corona.
Sustained.
Who brought up Corona?
Okay, so has Ernest been muted again?
Yes, he needs to go move on to his next question.
All right, Ernest, we're about to close for this evening. Would you like to ask one more question of this witness?
I don't know if I'm muted or not, am I?
You're not muted. Hey, this is Russell. We're about to wrap up this evening. You can have one more question of Mr. Collins, and then we're going to have to reschedule for the next witness. that
And
comes
we'll
from-
pick up right where we left off?
I would like to, Russell, if it's okay with you, I would like to end with Dan so we don't have to bring him back and then we can just go on to the next civil engineer.
Yes,
My next witness, which would be the civil engineer.
that's what I'm hoping for as well.
Great.
Yes. So we are going to try to wrap this witness up tonight, Ernest. So if you want to ask another question that's pertinent to this conversation right now, please do.
Okay, well, I did ask the one about the transmission from the tower to someone's cell phone, and I think the expert witness stated twice that there's no research that can do any harm to an immune system or radiation or anything, and I'll accept that. He's an expert witness. So now what? What happens now? What happens to the other people that want to ask questions of the civil engineer?
Just worry about yourself.
Ernest, I'm going to have the civil engineer next time. The civil engineer hasn't started. We're going to start with him next time. He hasn't even testified.
Yeah.
So he'll be on next time.
Yeah.
And you'll get to ask him questions.
Yeah.
Mr. McNolly, do you have any other questions for Mr. Collins?
No, I just want to say, though, I don't only worry about myself.
Okay, go on, Russell.
Okay. So are there any other members of the public that have questions for Mr. Collins?
There is one more. I'm so sorry. Someone just raised their hand. It is phone number ending in 4860. Please state your name. Phone number.
Maureen Nevin.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking my call. I would just like to know if there's an interference issue with having all of these antennas.
You mean like with your TV and things like that?
That's right, yeah. Wi-Fi, that sort of thing.
Dave?
The main job of the SCC is the allocation of frequency bands throughout the country. And when someone, any particular person or an entity wishes to operate a particular frequency in a particular area, they have to send out to all carriers in the area, everybody, what's called a frequency coordination. And then they have like 90 days to respond to say, oh, you're going to use X frequency? That's not a problem with me, don't worry. That's the FCC's main job, is to ensure as best they can that there is no interference between one particular transmitting area agency in one particular area and something other using a different frequency but staying close to the same frequency. That's their job, is to prevent interference issues. Imagine how confusing the world would be if because every time we attempted to communicate, we had an interference issue, wouldn't be able to communicate. So that's their overwhelming responsibility, is to maintain a coherent system.
So Dave, the answer is no. There is no interference.
Thank you for shortening that up. Yes, no is the answer.
So there's no danger of that. Or the power, the amount of, I don't know, this is way over my pay grade. Is there any danger of, using up bandwidth or anything like that?
Again, the short answer, no.
Okay. All right. We'll hold you to it. Thank you very much.
I consider myself held.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Maureen.
Mr. Collins.
And thank you, Ms. Nevin. Were you able to hear the remainder of all of the testimony? And
Yes, it was.
Thank you
It was
very
wonderful to get through.
Thank you. Thank you for calling back. Thank you.
And thanks for
All
your
right.
help.
I think that's it. We don't have any other, oh, I'm sorry. Christopher Avalone has raised his hand. Chris, go ahead.
Mr. Collins, am I correct in understanding the current network that's being used is 3G by AT&T, and that this will change it over to 4G?
You'd have to check with the RF engineer. I'm not sure that we just concern ourselves with the frequency and the
Okay,
amount of
so
power used in each frequency. We don't know what they call it. understand that the difference between any of the quote G's unquote merely means you're using different frequency bands. You ran out of room in that particular band. Remember when we first started off, there was only a few players and it was around 850 or 1900 megahertz. Well, there's a lot more players, a lot more subscribers. So we ran out of room in those frequencies and had to go to others. That's the reason we went to 5G. We ran out of 3G and 4G space. And that's all it is different frequencies. It's nothing else than that.
Can you ask that? Can you answer that question, Ms. Fairweather? Is this?
Oh, no, me? I think you already know. Sorry, I can't.
Daniel Panessa for the record. Am I unmuted?
No, you're not unmuted. Wait, first of all, Jack, is it okay to go back to Dan?
Yeah, but he's going to be subject to cross based on his answers.
All right, Dan, make it quick, please. And let's just finish you up so you don't have to come back.
Okay. No, so 5th generation for AT&T is going to be utilizing, I think the question is, everybody assumes that it's 5G or 5 gigahertz. 5G stands for 5th generation, which will be utilized in New Jersey, 850 megahertz. That spectrum is being utilized to implement the 5th generation. This site is being designed to be able to go forward with the 5th generation.
That was my question, Mr. Panessa. I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Do we need to open this back up to everyone?
We need, yeah, for just the limited scope
of
Mr. Panessa's testimony.
Okay, are there any board members that have any questions about 5G or what has just been spoken about?
No.
Great. Any professionals?
No.
Anyone in the public calling in about this?
Yes, there's one person, Mr. Magnoli. Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, sir. So we're talking 5G, and we're talking 20.
Which sir are you talking to?
At anybody.
No.
How about you? You. Okay, so 5.
I'm not equipped. You're better off asking Mr. Panessa.
Okay, so we're talking 5G. Would that look like those things that are all over Asbury now on the ground? Those big, they look like garbage cans up in the air with wires and all. That's 5G, isn't it? In other words, so here's my question. How much 5G does Asbury plan to put in? We have Verizon 5G, we have T-Mobile. Does that mean every carrier is going to want to put their own version somewhere so that could it be that Asbury will start looking like, antennas everywhere?
That's beyond the scope of the testimony he gave.
Thank you.
All right. Well, all right. So my question is, you're talking these antennas are they the ones that look like, I don't know how to explain it. They're usually white. They look like a sack of potatoes almost. And they're usually hanging over the side of the building or they're up on something on the roof. But they look like, you know what I mean? Like, is that what we're talking here?
The scope of his redirect testimony was very limited in answering a question from Mr. Avalone regarding 5G. That was the scope of his testimony, not about the design of antennas or anything like that. That ship has passed a long time ago. So ask your questions based on his testimony under redirect.
Okay. Well, then that's it then. It's 5G.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Magnoli. I don't see any other participants. I'd just like to rephrase at this point. If anyone that is calling on a telephone wants to ask a question, they need to dial *9 on their telephone keypad in order to raise their hand to let us know that they have a question. So I'm going to give you one more chance and then we're going to move on. I don't see anyone. All right, Russell, go on.
So we're officially done with these 3 witnesses for this evening, and we need to reschedule another meeting for the very highly anticipated civil engineer to come in and answer everyone's questions.
Yes, so I have the civil engineer and the planner. What is the next date of your hearing?
So This is Irina. Judith, our next available hearing date is August 11th.
August? Nothing in June or July?
Nothing in June or July. We are trying to limit the meetings to only one application. As you can see, it is taking the full meeting to go through one application or more. So that is the next available date we have available.
Understand. Gary and Paul, can you make August 11th since you're my last two witnesses? You can text me or say, or let Irina know.
Mr. Vinsky, I can make it.
Thank you, Mr. Ricky.
As of right now, yes.
Ms. Fairweather, I'm sorry. I'm showing my age there, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's great. So just so the record is clear, we are finished with our first three witnesses. They will not be coming back on August 11th, just my civil engineer and my planner.
Fine.
Sounds good.
Great. And can we get a motion to carry this application
Pardon
to,
my.
sorry, go ahead, Jack.
You consent to extension of time under the MLUL until at least August 11th?
Yes, actually August 12th, and I'll send you a letter to that effect.
Okay, August 12th. Okay, cool. Thanks. Sorry.
Go ahead, Russell.
Unless there's any other business, I guess we have a, can I have a motion to adjourn?
No, motion to carry.
Oh, motion to carry. I'm sorry.
At no further notice. For no
Without further notice.
I'm sorry. Can we have a motion to carry this to the August date meeting without further notice?
I'll make a motion.
That would be the 12th?
August 12th?
Is that correct?
August
11th.
11th. All right. It is the 11th. Okay. All right. Sorry.
Oh, do I have to say the whole thing? I make a motion to carry this application, AT&T, to August 11th with the extensions.
Without further notice.
Without further notice.
And I'll second that, Brittany.
Thank you. I have a motion by Brittany Ashman and a second by Russell Lewis. And all members in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Application carried to Tuesday, August 11th, 2020, without further notice.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
And Irina, when's the next meeting? I'm all thrown off now on days.
Our next meeting is June 9th.
June 9th, okay.
And sorry, hold on one second.
And I'm assuming they're going to be virtual until we hear otherwise.
Yes, we have directive that they are still going to be virtual through June. So at the very least through June, we are still having virtual meetings.
Okay. Thank you.
If I may okay, this is Dan. If I may interject, I will not be available on June 9th. I will not be at the meeting. I'm having my hip replaced on June 8th.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Yes, thank you, Dan.
Good
Quick
luck, Dan.
recovery.
Thank you.
Good luck, Dan.
Yeah, I won't have to come in with a crutch anymore.
Okay,
So then I'll have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Russell, I have a motion by Russell Lewis and a second by Brittany Ashman. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Thank you very much for your patience.
You're doing great. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks, everyone.
Safe home.
Night, everyone.
Good night.
Yeah, that was good.